Oh, those are cool.
Ev, well, thanks for joining me on the podcast. It's good to get you on. I've been listening to your podcast, I think, since the inception, and
Well,
uh,
thank you.
and you are the magic man that helped me get the pads behind me. So
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, uh, it had them. Oh shoot! Hang on. All right, my mic just went out, but I think you can still hear me, right?
Yeah, you're good.
All right. Yeah. So I've had them just over a year, and one of the best purchases I've ever made. So,
Yeah.
as much as I loved the old ones, don't get me wrong, I love those old ones, but the new ones with some of the added protection, just a little bit nicer on the knees. That's for sure.
I I'm not I can't even lie to you. I every time you would post and I'd see like the pictures of like your current gear and everything, I could not believe that you were still wearing those, and I give you a lot of credit because it's wild. It's
Well,
wild.
and I've told the story on the podcast before. It's one of the reasons I wore them so long is because they were so well made. I mean, very little maintenance to them. I had a strap replaced every now and then, toward the end, I took them to George's repair in St. Paul and had some of the seams tightened up along the boot and whatnot, but they were just in such good condition. It was like they didn't need to be replaced. And I was at the Let's Play Hockey Expo maybe 6, 7 years ago, and Mike was sitting
Mm.
there with Andy Moog, and they're talking, and they had the Goldberg set there, and my son was trying them on, playing, and uh, Andy Moog said something about don't be afraid to look around for a set for yourself. And I said, yeah, I wouldn't mind a new set, but I got a pair I bought in 1999 that are in great condition. And Andy's going, oh, you don't want to say that with Mike sitting here. And Mike was just sitting there smiling, going, no, that's what we like to hear because it means we make quality stuff and it lasts. And that was part of the, I don't want to say part of the problem, but part of the reason I wore them so long is because they lasted, you know.
No,
And
that's awesome. You know what's crazy? I do remember that show. That was my first. I mean, unless Andy's gone to different ones, which I don't think he has, because he did an autograph signing in the booth that year, right?
he may
Yeah.
have. I I go every year and walk the boy around. So if he did an autograph signing, we missed it, and he was just sitting there, and the two were talking.
Okay. Because
Yeah,
I still remember that was the year I flew in with Mike. We brought everybody, and it was a pretty big trip for us. And that might have been our second to last
yeah,
Let's Play show, but I got to meet Andy and incredible guy. Like we've had him on, and I've known him through the Vaughn stuff, just through him being a part of that and everything. And when we would go out after working the show and getting to sit and talk with the kids, the parents, everybody that would come through the booth and everything to look at gear, listening to Andy's stories are incredible because not only did Andy like live through all of the most incredible times of hockey, but there's an art to storytelling that he has. And
yeah,
like, you having doing been doing your show, like sometimes you love everybody, but sometimes you get people on, it's like, holy shit, we're really pulling teeth here. I'm sorry, like, if you didn't want to do this, you could have told me.
yeah,
I didn't want you to feel forced. And but some people just want the opportunity even to try. But like, you look at guys like Weeksy, like, if you can tell a story and you can tell a tale and you can weave people through and put them in the seats of like being there, it's a really incredible thing. So like when you talk to Andy too, he doesn't like when this is I want to put this as nicely as possible. I didn't realize Andy Moog was who he was when I met him. Like he's still a bit before my time. Like me, I'm like,
yeah,
Hashik. I caught the end of Cujo, Chris Osgood. Like watching Briz, like that was more my era where like my dad knew who Andy Moog was when I was like, hey, I'm going with this guy. He goes, Andy Moog, like seriously?
yeah.
And cup winner, playing with Coco, Boston, Dallas, like, and Andy had a very, very incredible career. And the other thing about Andy too that's questionable is like I like to see in this when I did the research for him was like people looked at his stats and they're like, how is he not a Hall of Fame inductee?
Right.
right? He's a snub,
Yeah.
or got snubbed, excuse me.
Yeah. He's in that class where I think Chris Osgood's going to be in the same class and Corey Crawford. Those three, career wise, I feel they're the same, where they were just a good, reliable goalie that people didn't realize how good they were until you really go back and look at it. My favorite stat that I remember looking up at one point is everybody talks about Lundqvist being a Hall of Famer, like first ballot Hall of Famer, no question. But when you compare his stats to Corey Crawford, they're almost identical.
Mm-hmm.
And Crawford's never mentioned in the Hall of Fame talk, but the difference is instead of having a Vezina, Crawford's got Stanley Cups.
Yeah.
It's in the knock that they put on Crawford and Osgood is, well, look at the teams in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
You still need the goalie to stop the pucks. And there's been a lot of teams that were really good but didn't win because of the goaltender. Yep. So, Moog, I'm a little bit older than you. So Moog, I caught the tail end of Moog. But it was fun watching him. I loved his mask in Boston, and loved that he carried it over into Dallas, Minnesota and then Dallas, just updated the colors with it. It was just one of those iconic masks of that era, I think.
No, for sure. Yeah, he I mean, when I look through and you look at his style, we talked about this before, I think at work. Goalies, I think I've talked about this with just the parents I deal with. Goalies used to have such an iconic identity to themselves through not that they were creating it, but through equipment.
Yeah.
Like you talk about Kirk McLean, like that's, love Kirk, incredible saves, incredible setups, and something that gets recreated all the time. Andy Moog's, Boston setup, the black and gold, gets recreated all the time. Different masks, like the Cujo mask, like every Ed Belfour stuff. Like people used to have such an iconic look.
Yeah.
And I think within the last, 10, 15 years, some iconic looks like Jimmy Howard. He's got one of those where like the iceberg was like, that was a staple.
Yeah.
But you don't really, because everyone's in these new stock graphics and there's a new one out every year that, a company pushes you into. I don't think you have that staple anymore. And like paint jobs are done where, you just kind of get a team logo thrown on there, and then you get like a Lego guy or something that might be like, pay homage to yourself or something that you're interested in. Tristan Jarry gets, Tom and Jerry, not even for the fact that they called him, Jerry, for the players that he dealt with, that were Tom and Jerry, and he got the cartoon. So it's like their style today, and it's incredible. And like what we can do with colors, tech, and everything is very, very cool. But you looked at stuff like Andy's stuff or Kirk or Richter, like iconic
Richter.
things that like when you say those names to goalies, you just picture it and you know exactly what you're looking for. Even Fleury, when he had the all golds, or yellows at the time, whatever color, either way, like that stuff just, it jumps out to you.
Well, and that was something. And to build on that, it wasn't just the equipment, but it was their stance. So many goalies now, just the silhouette of them looks pretty similar. But I can close my eyes and see the Belfour stance. I can see the Richter, the Potvin, even the Wah and the Brodeur. They all had this different stance. Hasek, hunched over his pads when plays in the other end. But to your point, the graphics too, they all had kind of their. For as simple as graphics were back then, they still had their own way of personalizing them to themselves and the way they utilized color. And that was actually something I was thinking about when I wanted to get new pads. It's like graphics change every year. And, in the beer leagues up at the super rink, it's like, oh, that guy got new pads this year. And 2-3 years later, they're looking old. So I'm like, well, I know what I buy next is probably my last set because the way I, use them forever. So I was like, well, what about a graphic that's going to last with me? And why not go with the one that's worked for 20 years already? Let's go for 40. And I mean, they turned out amazing. I mean, the folks at the factory, I can't thank them enough on fine craftsmanship and how you helped me get it. Because I remember reaching out to Tori. We were going back and forth, told him what I wanted. He's like, all right. And he came back and he goes, yeah, I just talked to my rep and they said no. And then he was talking to Carlson, I think, and because of that and his connection with you, all of a sudden I got a phone call back. He's like, change of plans. We can do it. So it's like, all right, maybe I'll go back. Maybe I'll do like a Jeff Hackett tribute or something, something that'll still stand the test of time. But it's like, all right, sweet.
Yeah, it's I mean, the thing is, everything takes a little bit of time, and like I
Yeah.
said, like you learn, there's a little bit of cost to it, but if you're patient enough and you want to do it correctly, there's a lot of different things we can do. So, and at the end of the day, like you said, if you're gonna have them for a long time, make sure it's something you like, you love, or that you really want, right?
Yep. And I know it's probably a bit of you probably are like, what the heck is with this guy on social media? Because when I got him, like I was doing the countdown, like it's been X number of weeks, so this be the week. And I wasn't trying to shame Vaughn by any means, because I knew when I ordered mine, one, it was in the middle of the summer season when you guys are probably doing all your pro stuff. And we were in the middle of a pandemic when the lead time was just crazy. I mean, there were quite a few companies that weren't even taking orders, so it's like, I was doing it more of like, the anticipation's building, almost like the kid waiting for Santa, like, when's Santa coming? I can't wait. And it was kind of fun. And I just love memes and GIFs. So it's like, what fun one can I find this week?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then when they came, I was just like, oh my, I remember Tori called me. He's like, yeah, they're in. I'm like, wait, what? And like, I know you've been in the city, so I live up in White Bear, and General Sports is down in Edina on the complete other side of town. And
Yeah, it's not close.
No, and so I finish up with work. I'm told my wife, it's like, I'm gonna go pick up my pads, and she's like, what? And I was like, yeah, they're in. And she's like, you're gonna go in rush hour to go pick them up. Can't you like go tomorrow over lunch? She's like, no, they're in today. I'm not going to wait. I'm going to get them today. So yeah, I called Tori right back. I'm like, I'm on my way. I'll be there in like an hour, maybe an hour and a half, depending on traffic. He's like, all right, I'll be here. So yeah, that was fun. So we'll keep talking equipment. That's for sure. But let's talk a little bit about you. How did you get started in the game of hockey? And let's trying to find a political correct way to say this, but you're Korean by birth, correct? If I remember right from, but you're adopted. And I say because one of my buddies who I've had on the show, Eleanor's very much like you, Korean by birth, adopted. How did you get with that background? How did you get started in the game of hockey?
Well, the funny part is the way you asked that. You don't have to be PC about it, but I appreciate it because, very fortunate enough for me. My girlfriend of 7 years said yes when we got engaged,
Yeah.
and she's Filipina, and we've always talked about it jokingly, but last night we were talking about, I'm like, you do realize you're gonna become a Rio Celine, her middle name, and then Bommarito now. So now you're gonna have to live with my life that I've always lived. When you fill out a resume, or you call for an interview, or you're going to set up a meeting with someone via email, text, whatever, and then you show up, you're never exactly what they're expecting. So it's it's a little thrown off. I got a very Italian name. I told her our firstborn son's name is going to be Giovanni. So he's going to be 100%, Asian American looking kid, and he's going to be Giovanni Bommarito. She's worried about me giving them too much trauma, or my child too much trauma with a name like that. But I said, I figured it out and I got through it. So, it makes you tough. It gives you some grit.
Yeah.
But no, I was adopted from South Korea when I was about 4 months old. Two loving parents, Vicky, Terry Bommarito, here in Detroit, Michigan, Metro Detroit. Not from Detroit. You can't say that around here. In Minnesota, you can say you're from Minneapolis. If you're from like White Bear, nobody's gonna know the difference, right? But like,
well, because of Fargo, everybody knows about White Bear.
yeah,
Bears.
that's true. That's true. That's true. Very true. But yeah, we're from Metro Detroit. How I got my start in hockey was my dad grew up playing junior B. Actually, funny story, he played with Jeff Jackson in Detroit. And the cool part about playing with Jeff was my dad always puts it lightly. He's like, yeah, after games or like when we were done with stuff or practice, me and the rest of the boys, we go out and have quote unquote pops. I'm like, all right, so you're getting hammered at the bars at 5 o'clock. Um, but Jeff would go coach different teams. He had
Hmm.
youth teams like what I'm doing now. He would go work with kids and everything like that. And now you look at where Jeff Jackson is at, the University of Notre Dame, incredible hockey program, Fighting Irish, incredible rink, great, just great environment that he set up there. But my dad played junior B hockey when I was shoot 3, 4, 5. He put me on skates. I was going to just he would take me ice skating just to learn how to ice skate. I had the goofy little, I can't even remember them, like the My Little Tyke elbow pads, the blue
Yeah.
and like gold ones that were, I don't even know if there were anything in them. I had those. My dad got me a 6 CCM helmet. There's an old picture of me somewhere where I was like leaned up on the gate, like on the doorway, the entrance to the ice, and I like posed. And it's just, I had a Pokemon t-shirt on. It's really funny. I just remember that. I'll have to find that. But, and ever since then, like my dad, when he was playing beer league, I'd go watch that. He was playing in ice at Troy Ice Arena, and then he would play roller at Joey D's. Joe Dumars here, R.I.P. Joey D's. Uh, and I think when I started to like skate and everything, and he wanted to get me into hockey, I just started playing roller hockey, just learned how to play, and from there, I actually played roller, player and goalie until I got serious with playing goalie. Up until probably about like 6th grade. And then from like 4th to 6th grade, I couldn't stop playing street hockey. Like me and my friends, you come home from school, hey, let's go play
Oh
hockey. We're
yeah.
gonna go play hockey. We're gonna go play hockey.
Every day after school is like homework be damned. We're going to play hockey. When I was in
Yeah.
high school, so I went to Brother Rice in Chicago, a name you're probably familiar with because
Yep.
we have our brother school in the Detroit area.
Absolutely.
And then we had Mother
Powerhouse.
McCall. Yeah, we had Mother Macaulay, the girls' school, right next door, and we always laughed when I went. That's where Jenny McCarthy went to school. So some of my friends, the joke was, oh, Jenny McCarthy was my babysitter, but a few of my friends, it was true. But then there was this little grade school, and they had the perfect blacktop parking lot for roller hockey. So every day after school, as long as it wasn't raining or snowing, we were on that parking lot playing roller hockey until it got dark out, or we had to go home and get our equipment to go to hockey practice. And it was just like every single day we were out there. And our coach would get so mad because he's like, you guys are playing too much roller hockey. You're not doing stops and starts. You're doing these great big circles to turn around. He's like, that's because of being on the rollerblades. And we're like, yeah, probably. But, we got pretty good hockey sense because of it now too. And he's like, yeah, that's true.
It's that's an interesting point you brought up because I just took my USA coaches clinic thing, my level 2.
Yeah.
And that is, well, I got a lot to say about that. That was, I love USA hockey, but those coaching clinics are brutal. For a lot of explainable reasons, but I understand why they are the way
Yeah.
they are. You can't sort through that stuff and figure out who knows what and who
Well,
doesn't.
they should have an option of, have you played, how many years of hockey have you played,
Yeah.
or at what level? And if you're able to check that box, okay, we're going to give you this version.
Hmm.
Or are you just a parent coaching? Okay, we're going to give you the all day.
Yeah.
Oh,
You there?
there we go.
We're back.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, it's I just sat through those and I was like, I wanted to poke my eyes out because I'm like, this is so brutal. I got a guy who learned, which I guess is good, and I don't, this sounds very arrogant, but like, I don't, if, unless you've taken these, you don't understand how painful it is, as it
Yes.
sounds like you have, Joe. Like, he was telling, they asked it wasn't a rhetorical question, it was actually an intro question, with answers expected. They asked, do you think it's a good idea to yell at your kids from the bench while they're playing in a hockey game, playing refs, whistles, games on the line, it matters. And he goes, yeah, you should always be yelling at them, screaming at them, telling them what to do. And anyone that has dealt with kids or coached kids from 8 to 12, even maybe not 14s, but definitely 12s still, if you scream at them or tell them what to do, they stop skating in stride and they'll look at you
Yep.
and try to comprehend what you're saying because they're thinking something while they're on the ice, learning how to just trying to survive out on the ice for,
Yeah.
their 30-second shift.
Mm,
They'll stop thinking and say, "What the hell did he say? Oh, I got to do that." Plays going the other way. You don't have to talk to them. Wait
no.
till they come to the bench. Let them figure it out, make a mistake, or do it right on the ice. They come back and you explain it to them. And I'm like, this
Yeah.
is the group I'm in. I think these are the people I'm grouped in with. And it's just, I got my participation the last, I think, hour of my second clinic. I was listening to it through my AirPods. I was coaching a game. We had a game that night, and it was against the top team in our division. I'm like, I can't miss this for this. The reason I'm doing this clinic is to help these kids. So
Yeah.
why are we? I don't know. It's a big toss up. I don't even know where we started before that, to be
But no,
honest.
it's interesting. So I've taken those classes because I was coaching high school here when I finished college. Before we had kids,
Very
I was
cool.
coaching high school here up in Forest Lake, and so I just took we didn't to coach high school in Minnesota. We didn't necessarily need the USA hockey certification, but I thought, hey, it's good to go through it. So I went through level 3, and when you get to level 3 is a little better because you got guys who have clearly coached a while. So they know the game a little better, but it's like each level you go up, they do get better because it kind of weeds out those people that really shouldn't be coaching.
They do it recreationally. They just keep getting their ones and twos.
Yeah, they're doing it because they needed a coach for their kid's team, and he was the parent. He or she were the parents that raised their hand. Now, I think it was when I took my level 2, Minnesota hockey had like a big education day. So they had like all 3 levels because level 4 is like the yearly symposium in one place. So they had all 3 levels going, but they also had seminars going on for parents, and they held it down at the XL Energy Center and the River Center because they had all those rooms there. And to start the day, they got all the coaches down on the floor because they had the ice covered. So we're on the floor where the ice would be, and the parents are in the stands. And they had some USA coaches come up, but Don Lucia was still the coach of the Gophers at the time.
Okay.
So they were winning national titles. And he comes out and starts out and he goes, "I got the second greatest job in the world." And you can see some people looking around. He goes, "Some of you are probably wondering, what's the best job in the world?" He goes, "Coaching a hockey team for orphans because you don't have to deal with parents." And all of the coaches are just laughing. You look up in the stands and the parents are just sitting there going, they saw no humor in it, but he's like, you know what? He's like, it's inevitable. You're going to have those parents that are just overbearing. He goes, "I coach at the Division 1 level and I'm winning national championships. And I still get phone calls from parents asking why Johnny's not on the power play. Why isn't Johnny getting more ice time?" He goes, "First time it happened, I went out to my secretary and I said, what does it say on my door?" And she says, "Don Lucia, head coach of University of Minnesota." He goes, "That's what I thought. I thought I was a college hockey coach. I shouldn't be dealing with parents right now." But I mean, that's the other thing about coaching that I think a lot of parents don't think of, but it reminds me of one of my favorite Yogi Berra quotes. And when I say favorite Yogi Berra quotes, there's about 800 of them that I love.
Yeah.
But he said, "Youth sports are good. It keeps the parents off the streets."
Yeah. It's true. It's
Yeah.
true. I mean, we had it the other day where one of our kids on the family, not a direct parent, but made a comment about, "Hey, you need a stopwatch," and I'm not the head coach. I got a guy, Jamie Ramin, who I tell him this all the time. I don't think he really believes me, but I would run through a wall for this guy. He's a younger guy, early 20s, played up in the AJ. He recently, like I've seen him skate and we do all our skill stuff and he's good. He came in sub for a men's league game and I was like, I didn't realize how good Jamie was at playing hockey. He's so
Yeah.
good. But the way he teaches kids, he's not asking our best kid to like everybody move the puck to him because we're coaching
Right.
12U hockey. We're at 11 years old and like let him fly up the wall. You guys crash the net and we'll figure it out. He's trying to teach these kids how to regroup. He's trying to teach these kids the proper way to play hockey. So
Right.
at this age, when you go to your 14 team or you go to a 15 team, even if you're not playing AAA and a coach is trying to get you to regroup, at least our group of 15 to 18 kids, when they leave, it won't be a surprise to them.
Well,
And I love the way Jamie coaches.
play to win, and to do that, you just give the most talented kid the puck, and that's admirable.
Yeah.
And that's what coaches are supposed to do. We're supposed to find the situations that we can put a kid into so they can succeed and they can learn from that and grow. While I'm thinking of it, so one of your recent podcasts, you were talking to Evan Moyce, and he was talking about his goalie coach at Ohio State, Dustin
Dusty.
Carlson.
Yeah.
I happened to coach Dusty in high school his senior year.
Really?
And just had him on the podcast like an episode or two ago. And it was funny because when I had him on, he was talking about, he's like, yeah, we had this goalie. He's like, great guy. He was never the starter. He goes, but he would just yell at people from the bench and just like, make noises. He goes, at one point, the coaches came to me. They're like, all right, it's got to stop. So he's like, yeah, I talked to Moise and I was like, you get 2 a game. That's all you get now. So as you guys have been talking about this, like, yeah, Dusty was telling me that. But when I had him on, we were talking about like his parents were the ideal hockey parents. Like the only time I ever saw his dad, I know his mom and dad were at all the games. Like the only time I really ever interacted with his dad was when I was putting together the team posters at the beginning of the year because his dad owned a printing company.
Very cool.
We had other parents. Like we had this kid, Aaron Padich. His parents lived down the street from me. I always saw him at the games, never talked to him. To the point where when they moved in down the street, I was like, didn't even recognize him. It wasn't until my son was selling Boy Scout wreaths where he sold him one, and I saw the last name. I was like, I think I coached your kid. And they're like, oh, yeah, you do look familiar. It's like there are those parents. And then there are the parents that, as coaches, we said they're the ones that stand in the corner. They always stand. They never sit down. They always stand in the corner. So we actually named the one corner in our rink Bitcher's Corner because it was always the same, like 5 or 6 dads and like 2 moms just sitting there, arms always crossed, grumpy looking, yelling at refs. It's like, you're not doing anything for your kid doing that. In fact, the one kid, his dad was always over there, and he was a really talented baseball player too. And I worked for a newspaper many years ago, and I was covering the baseball game. And his dad got thrown out of the baseball game for arguing balls and strikes with the ump from the stands. So the ump was like, just go. And he wouldn't leave. So his kid, he packs up his baseball bag, and he's like, if you're not going to go, Dad, I'm going to go. His kid actually left the game, and his dad still wouldn't leave. And those are the parents that coaches have to deal with. It's more than just figuring out your practice plan and who's going to play, what minutes each night. It's trying to navigate those crazies and work with the kid to let them know, like, hey, we understand that's not a reflection of you.
Yeah. Well, that's an incredible story just because the kid's more of an adult at that point than the parent who is his adult. But yeah, it's funny because like my dad growing up was that guy who at every game or skate practice was the guy in the corner because with us, we had the group of dads in the corner that would stand and not sit with the people in the stands because they would be screaming at refs or, telling their kids, skate, skate, skate. Like, it's like, just let the kid play hockey. You know what? You're not going to be able to influence it. And the thing you said too, that my dad always told other people, and I tell people, if you don't like the way it's being coached and you don't like what we're doing with your kid, or you think you could do it better, put skates on, go take a class, you get on the ice, you run the team next year. But until you are able to set up a practice plan 3 or 4 times a week, get these kids on the ice and get them ready to go somehow for games 2 times a week or at tournaments, and you can get these kids up and ready to go and get them fired up, no one realizes how much you love to do it for the kids. You do it for all the right reasons, but it gets tiring. It's exhausting. On top of, like, there's some guys that do this at the youth level as a full-time job. I do it obviously part-time, like this is a all after work thing for me, but I love helping it. We have a great group of kids that I love dealing with and messing with all the time and joking around. And it's one of those things where, like, if you stepped into my skates and you jumped on the ice and you were doing this all the time, I don't think you realize how hard this is and you're just trying to keep kids in a good mental state while getting them to focus. And depending on your age group and your level, like if you're coaching 12U AAA, it's probably a lot easier to get those kids to buy in because they're operating at a different level. But you go down to A or AA kids, you got to really like make sure everyone's dialed in and trying to get them all to show up collectively at a practice every day. not easy. So
Well, it's interesting you say that too, because like when I was coaching, and like I coached because I loved the game, and like I didn't have kids at that point, so yeah, I could spend 6 nights at the rink after work and all of that.
yep.
But it's so rewarding working with those kids. But I remember we were getting ready to play White Bear Lake, our arch rival, and one of the other coaches had just spent a year playing in the ECHL. He played down at Mankato and everything else.
Okay.
And he
Big time.
played high school hockey for the school I was coaching at. So like he was fired up. Like, this is a big game. The arena was packed with fans from both communities and everything else. And we had to fire up our kids.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, he couldn't understand. He's like, what is with kids these days?
Yeah.
He's like, when I was in school, and he's like, and that's not that long ago. Our coach didn't even all the coach had to do is walk in and say 2 minutes so the ice is ready.
Mm-hmm.
That was the pregame talk for the rivalry game. Nobody had to get you fired up. He's like, but here we are before the game. We have to go in there and get these kids fired up and remind them that it's a rivalry game. It's like, what is it with kids these days? They are a different breed than when even we were growing up. And I don't think some parents realize that,
Yeah.
they have different priorities, different things motivate them. And as coaches, we have to figure it out, because while one kid might be fine, another one's different. Some of the goalies, like when I was coaching Dusty, he was a senior. It was my first year coaching. I walked in, I was like, this kid's good. I'm not going to do anything to my intention for that year with him was to not break him.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was very hands off with him. I watched him. If I noticed, maybe his confidence was down, I would try and coach him a little bit that way, or little things. Was like I didn't need to worry about him, so I focused.
It's really
on
maintenance type
Yeah,
stuff. Like, you're not going to
exactly.
rebuild the wheel and, hey, we're going to work on this, and the other thing. It's like, all right, we're just going to, let you feel the puck. We're going to hit a couple spots today, make sure you're on your feet, and we'll go from there.
Yeah,
Super
exactly. And
simple.
what I loved about him is he had this swagger and confidence that you can't coach. Like the confident in himself, and he was good. That helped. But I mean, he would just walk in out onto that ice, and he wearing his Warwick, and his chin was always just so held so high, walking out onto that ice, and in that anthem line that, like, if anybody shot a puck at him, it would just get him right in the neck. But he was just, yeah, I'm confident.
Absolutely.
I got this. But some of the other goalies, God, I'm trying to remember. I had Paulie Moberg. He wound up going to play at Air Force Academy. It's just a fantastic kid, good family, and I would just literally look at him, give him a look, and he's like, "Yeah, I got it. I know what I got to do." And then I had another kid, Nate Burris, good kid, left-handed goalie, so I always picked on him for that. But a Vaughn user, loves his Vaughns. And he had the Olaf Kolzig mask too. I don't know what it was about Kolzig that he loved, but he had the Zilla mask, so that was kind of cool. But he was one of those kids where I could pick on him throughout the game. He did let in a bad goal. I knew it was the best thing to do for him was to just pick on him and kind of like poke fun at him, because that would lighten him up and it would get him out of his head. But then I had another kid who he had stuff going on at home, and like had to put the kid gloves on with him. Had to put my arm around him. It's okay, buddy. Everything. So, and I don't think parents realize that when you're dealing with the team, you have all of those. You have to treat each kid differently. You can't just walk in. I mean, we do still walk in the locker room and fire off after at certain times, but it's like you almost have to go up to them individually, and parents don't realize that.
Yeah. It's a lot of individual management of like relationship of what each kid's going through, and how you can handle that situation, and that's what makes a good coach. And that's, I think that circling it back to the USA Hockey like clinics, and I understand why we got to do it, and it's a good weeder, and there is some stuff some people can take away, but those are the things that they don't teach. Like, I get the safe sport, I get how we set up a practice plan. Like, those are all things that are mechanically that's easy to do, but to teach how to work with kids and develop and like just manage relationships. And the biggest thing is allow the kids to have fun, but
Yeah.
inspire them and make them chase to do better, because it can't always just be slapstick. Oh, we're gonna have fun, whatever. We'll go scrim and we'll run around and you guys can, just do stupid drills. It's about getting better, but also mixing in fun and being competitive. It's like that's a complicated formula in itself. You know what I mean? So
It is. And, parents just don't get it. But I mean, that's half the reason we coach. It's fun, it's challenging. Um, and it's always fun when you're working with a kid and they're struggling with something, and all of a sudden you just see that light go on. And
mhm.
now they got it. I liken it to the Mighty Ducks too when they're trying to teach Luis Mendoza how to stop.
Yep.
Like he's trying, then all of a sudden it happens. He's like, that's how you do it.
Yep.
And that's what makes coaching worth it.
Yeah.
It's not the wins and losses, it's those moments.
Yeah, I've been very, very fortunate to work with two goalies for a significant amount of years, like, consecutively. And Henry, since he's been 7 or 8, has come a long, long way in his development. Like, I took him from a kid when he first put on pads and they're 8U. They would always do shootouts, just constantly shootouts at the end of games and stuff, just for the kids to have fun. And a kid would walk down and he did the 8U thing where, like, as they get close, we just lunge at them, take their
Yeah.
feet out. And it's like, that's classic stuff. Now we're playing in some big games and the stuff he's doing, like he's pushing on second saves, he's scrambling, he's battling for rebounds. And it's like, to see where that kid is now versus where he was when we started is incredible. And then he's got his sister. She played house hockey all last year, made the jump to travel hockey. We're like a single A team in a different ranking, but we're a single A team. And when we got her last spring, she was a lot in that same space where he was when he was 8, where in house hockey here, well, where she was playing, she didn't have to move. She
Yep.
stood at the top of the crease. She knew that, and would just go down every time because those kids just kind of come and they don't even shoot the puck. They just push it into her. So we can just stand there. The play always somehow funnels to her feet. They'll never go around her. So she didn't have to shuffle, move, or shift, change angle, and they'll push the puck into her. She has to go down, and sometimes we can cover it. Sometimes we're not. It'll scramble. Then they might get a goal.
Yeah.
Where she came from we'll call it last April to where we played Honeybake the other day, and she was hitting her spot. She's firing through T pushes. She's gobbling up rebounds. She's doing anything she can to move. And the way she was skating, I wish I could show her a video of where she was then, where we just couldn't move versus where we are today. And seeing that for me is like, it's a treat. And I tell the parents, her parents and their coaches all the time, because we're a group with a couple different teams and we're a really close knit group. And it's like, there's a lot of reward into doing this, you
Hmm.
know, and I get compensated for lessons and everything like that. But I think for me, being a 29-year-old kid without kids and getting to see what happens when you commit time and you're teaching a kid how to do a skill and then they go from where she was today to there, it is the most rewarding shit. And it's the coolest thing. It's the
Yep.
best way I can be a part of hockey right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and helping beer leaguers like myself get their dream set.
Yeah, that's true. That too. That's up there on the top of my list. Like, hey, what can I get done today, and how can I make the world a better
Yeah.
place? Beer league gear, helping kids. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's that. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. On one of the recent episodes, you had shared that, as you were getting close to done with high school, your dad had an honest talk with you. And
Yeah.
he was like, look, Ev, I love you, but you're not good. You're not going to go play Division 1. Like it's not going to happen, and I don't think enough parents are as honest with their child's own ability. I swear, up until my mom passing away, she thought I should be playing in the NHL. And I think my dad at times still thinks like if I wanted to, and would work the email and the phones, that I could probably go play over in Europe. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, they have those love goggles on, but your dad, as much as he loved you, was still honest and gave you really good advice. And that like while you might not make, the NCAA Division 1 team, there's still this thing called club, ACHA club hockey.
Yeah.
Club is Butcher Grass likes to say club hockey is still college hockey.
Yeah.
What was that like to have that honest conversation with your dad? And I mean, you said it was, the right assessment and was the right thing for you. But what was that like having that kind of honesty from your dad as you play? Because I'm gonna guess it wasn't just at one time. It was throughout your playing days, competitive playing days, because you still play. But how refreshing was that as you look back at it?
Um, for me, a lot of life, and I think that outside of hockey, like a lot of things are right time, right place, right?
Yeah,
Like you talk about an NHL goalie who say he's a young guy and he gets drafted and we're on the right team, and then he gets into a game and his team's lights out that year. That takes that kid who's a rookie and gives him a lifelong NHL career because he's having a stud season, signs a 5-year contract, whatever. But you take a same kid in a different scenario and you put him on a bad team, he's never going to play in the NHL again. He'll end up being a coaster. You know what I mean? So it's
yeah,
right time, right place. At that time, it all worked out to where like my dad actually was always super supportive with my games. He was one of those goalie parents that, he played out, so he didn't really fully understand all the makings of it. And after a game, say we lost 4-3 and I knew I should have had 3 of them, he'd always give me the spiel. Well, like, that forward who scored on you had to go through 5 other guys. They had
yeah,
to do this, or somebody else made a mistake before it got to you. I'm like, Dad, I get it, but like I'm still shit. Like I should have had those goals. Like and that's the stuff I'm trying to teach our kids. But when high school was done, I had an incredible experience. I was on a team for after my sophomore year, my junior, senior year, we would pack the stands every home game. We had
hmm
friends showing out for us. It'd be standing room only. Senior year, these kids came with the easy button, which we stole from whoever when you saw that on YouTube. And like kids are jumping in the glass every goal. It was like an incredible, incredible high school experience. And the hockey it's better than where Michigan high school is today. But I'm done, and I'm starting to get calls from like WSHL, Western States League, which I think dissolved into something new. Getting calls from this guy down in Florida with the Florida Eels, which I think turned into a different Florida team in the USPHL. Getting calls from out east. Hey, Everett, we saw your because I had one of those stupid little free profiles with
hmm
a couple clips, and like we'd love for you to come to camp. And my dad, having played junior B in Detroit, knew he could see through the shit. And
yeah,
he goes, "You're not. I'm not paying $1,000 for you to go to a camp for them to fill their camp
right,
and then say, oh no, we're just going to go in a different direction this year." He's like, "You're good. You had a ton of fun, but to go do that doesn't make sense if I'm going to pay for more hockey if I can just help you with school. If you go to Michigan State now, you can go play some sort of club, whether it's ice, it's roller, whatever. You can go play club, have a ton of fun, move on with your life, still be involved with hockey, and
yeah,
I'll help you with school rather than paying for stupid junior hockey where you're a third goalie, you play once a month, and like you're just going to end up going to Michigan State to play club hockey anyways, even
yeah,
though you got your quote unquote junior experience." And I don't want to shame anybody that's out there that goes and does that route because everybody's different.
yeah,
But at the end of the day, right time, right place for me. Went to Michigan State for 4 years, graduated on time, did internships at Vaughn when they were willing to bring on somebody in a position that was never existent before.
hmm
And now I have a full-time job, and I'm very, very lucky to be doing what I'm doing now because where I am now didn't exist before I was there.
right,
So like because of the timing in place and the work that I got to put in when I was an intern, now I have a job with the company that if you told me in high school, hey, you're gonna go shoot an SLR3 video, the first ever like real video promo that Vaughn's gonna do, you're gonna help kind of organize it, bring in a bunch of staff to like film it, edit it, organize the goalies, know what we're gonna do on ice, get the cameras, get everything set up, get the rink, get people to do the dashers and shoot photo, and we're going to shoot it. And it worked out as beautifully as it did outside of both guys getting traded immediately after we filmed it, which it is what it is. That's just the way it
yeah,
goes for us. Like I would be beside myself because I was that kid in high school that was such a hockey nerd. Everything was hockey. The
same,
way I spoke, everything was just like, now looking back at it, it's a little bit too much. It's a little bit cringe just because you weren't that good. You were good at high school, but like you were obsessive. But it made me into the person I am today. I know how to work hard, even though like my talent wasn't always there, but my compete and willing to like go to workouts, commit, do everything I got to do outside of hockey to just be competitive, develop me now. And not playing junior hockey, getting a job at Vaughn is it all kind of worked out for me. So
Well, it's funny too because I've used it in job interviews because I used to do a lot of contracting, and whenever I would go in for a new gig, people are like, "Well, tell us a little bit about yourself." I'm like, "Well, I was an athlete,"
yeah,
and they're like, "Okay." It's like that means I know how to work with different personalities,
yep,
and I don't have to like you to work well with you.
hmm,
We know what the common goal is, and we can do that, and know that at the end of the workday, we don't have to hang out.
hmm,
And they're like, oh, and they're like, and I'm an analyst. So they're like, well, you'll be part of the marketing team, but you'll can be by yourself. Are you okay with that? It's like, not only am I an athlete, I'm a goalie. I am used to being a part of the team, but on my own. And they're like, oh, okay. And luckily living in Minnesota, they all get that. But like if
yeah,
I were down south, like Kyle, they might be like, well, what does that mean?
yeah. Hockey. What is that
Yeah.
on the field?
Yeah, but up in Minnesota, I mean, they get it. Um, yeah. So, you've been mentioning roller quite a bit. I mean, I didn't realize how big roller hockey was in Michigan until I started looking into it. And you still play. What is the roller scene? Obviously, Spittin' Chicklets came out there and you dominated that. Uh, won the Chicklets Cup. Um, you know, how has roller hockey played a role in your hockey career?
What's crazy is like going back to when I played. I grew up playing street hockey, and I'm sure you remember all the Franklin street hockey gear sets that
Yes,
they did.
during the
Brutal equipment.
the Roller Hockey International.
Yep. But all those Franklin sets, like the street hockey ones, they had like the flame graphic, the
Yeah,
USA, the Army, the camo with the bullet holes. I
yeah,
still remember sixth grade when we had Thanksgiving, or not Thanksgiving, when we had Halloween, or fifth grade, fifth or fourth grade, something like that. I actually wore my USA Franklin pads to school, and I was a goalie for Halloween.
nice.
And I thought
Yeah,
that was the coolest thing. But I grew up playing street hockey, played goalie, sixth grade roller hockey. Our elementary school team needed a goalie because our kid moved. I said, I want to do it. Wore my street hockey stuff, borrowed everything else, and I fell in love with it. And playing roller hockey and watching Dominic Hasek in Detroit at the same time, probably the two worst things that ever happened to me in terms of development, because this is the coolest thing. Watching him do what he does and just being athletic and compete. Like guy wasn't he had no structure to it, but obviously because he was so good at compete and what he was doing, he got away with it. And in roller, that's where I took my game. And then
yep.
eventually got to ice, polished it, figured it out, and like cleaned a lot of things up. But roller's it's a lot of fun. I mean, for me, because I grew up doing it, like I talked to I don't know if you'll know the name, but Tyler Spezia, he's a Michigan kid, plays in Grand Rapids now, grew up playing high school hockey, huge roller guy. You know, he was a
Hmm.
part of the duo, him, Brandon Hawkins, and a bunch of other guys that are playing pro now, all played with Matt Koleski for the Border Cats growing up as kids. We were all kind of running around there. Those guys all played pro hockey, so it did help them develop. But Tyler said when I talked to him before on a different show, I said, what is it about roller that keeps you coming back? He's like, I love ice hockey. I love playing hockey. I can't believe I get paid to play pro hockey now and play a kids game, but he's like, I'm never more comfortable than when I have wheels on my feet and I'm out there. And when he's out there and we go to these pro tournaments, he runs his mouth. He
Hmm.
talks a lot of shit, and because he knows what he's doing, he understands the game. He is a very high end level guy. Where like you go to ice hockey, he's very good. He's playing in the AHL. He's got back-to-back contracts in Grand Rapids. But compared to some of those other guys that grew up doing it their whole lives, you know, and their first line forward, that's a skill guy, he knows he's not at that rank.
Right.
So for roller, it's really cool to step back and just go play there. But in terms of development, it doesn't. It's the worst thing for you outside of learning to compete on 2-on-1s, 2-on-0s, battling for rebounds, getting stuff that you have no business getting. And I think that's the coolest part about roller is like there's a lot of 2-on-1 chances, backdoor stuff that you can stack the pads. You can do stuff that you wouldn't normally do in ice hockey, and it works. And you come up with the most ridiculous saves. And like there's a guy, Kishi, who I played college roller with at Michigan State when we play on Tuesdays. He always seems to pick up pucks and he'll get turnovers inside a circle. and he'll have his back to me, pick up the puck, turn around, and I'll be coming out and throw him a 2-pad stack. Works every time. He can never score because when they see it, they're like, "What the hell's this? What the hell's about to happen?" And they just throw it at you, and then boom, it's gone. So
Yeah,
it's a lot of fun.
You can't say you can't use the 2-pad stack on the ice because I still do it all the time.
Yeah.
I've shared the story a couple times on the episode. I was filling in for a summer game pre-COVID, and there was a high school team getting on the ice for one of their summer skates, and only one of their goalies was there. And the coach is like, "Hey, if you want some extra ice, have you out there." I'm like,
for sure.
It's been years, since I put the pads on for practice. Yeah, I could use it. So like the last 15, 20 minutes we're scrimmaging, and 2-on-1, they pass the puck across. I stack the pads and make the save, but the puck just stops there. The kid could have easily put it right over me, but he just stopped, and he looks at his coach. He goes, "What is that? How do I respond to that?" And
this is not allowed. Somebody get this guy.
Yeah, he's like, "I've never seen this before." It was like, "What is this wizardry?" And I look at the kid. I said, "You keep playing until you hear a whistle.
Yeah,
you should have scored there." And he's like, I didn't know what to do after that." He had never seen it. It was, but I do it so much in the beer leagues that the other teams are getting used to it. Yep. They still don't anticipate it, but they're not as wowed by it anymore.
Yeah, it's a classic move. I throw a couple diving pokes all the time and stuff, but it's interesting though. Like talking about roller, it is huge in Michigan, St. Louis, Cali, obviously, Florida. It's growing. Kyle's down there, always wheeling around. Out east, it doesn't exist. New York, though, I shouldn't say out east. I'm talking like Boston, New England area. Like no one really plays it out there. But as I say that, Adam Ernie, that giant guy for the Red Wings, he loves roller, and he brings a team from Connecticut. His buddies he grew up playing roller with in Connecticut, they always come to Detroit and play in tournaments, and he wheels around there. But yeah, like New York, Long Island, it's really, really big. Minnesota's never had it, but it's ironic though, because Narch one time they closed out the X and they ran a 2-rink system for a national tournament where the big sheet was obviously tiled, and then they put in the one where the expo side was. There's always pictures of it. They did it there, and there's a kid, I'm sure you might know the name, Jack Roble, played with the Magi back then. He might still be with Augsburg. He loves to play roller in the summers. Henry Welsh plays roller in the summers. I don't know where they do it in Minnesota, but it's a very small thing, it sounds like. But there's a group of kids, and I keep telling them, I'm like, take that group of kids and friends and go do a State Wars tournament and play. Name your team, whatever. You guys could put on like Golden Gophers jerseys, go to State Wars and go play in it, and just have some beers, have fun, wheel around. It is the coolest thing you can do in a tournament. You have all the USA hockey, like ice hockey ones that are fun, but roller is different because it's depending on what you make of it. Like if you're playing pro, it's obviously a little bit more intense, but even pro, it's way, way more casual than anything you expect.
Yeah.
And it's just a lot of fun. You get on the bench, you compete, listen to the guys chirp and talking about set and picks and the way they look at the game. It's very intense. But for the guys, when you're going to do a AA, single A division out at State Wars or any national tournament, it's just a lot of fun. You go out at night, you get ripped up with the boys, you come in banged up, you try to get through the playoffs, you get your playoff game, and then you just go on a heater. That's all it's about.
And I wanted to ask, as a goalie for ice hockey, the footwork is very different for roller hockey.
Mm-hmm.
Does that impact you as you go back and forth between ice and roller, or do you find it maybe helps you because you think of different ways to make those desperation saves?
That's the part that kills you, is when you're in roller and you can't slide move and you got to make a second save and you can't push into it. Now you have roller fly, so things are a little different and you can slide around. But back in the day when I was a kid, it was harder to transition. Like I would stay away from roller when I was playing in season or when I was getting ready to like be ready to go. It was just a summer thing because the footwork's there, your T push, your C cut, everything like that. But the way you hit your spots and how you pick your spots, in roller, you divide the floor up into like almost 3 or 4 parts where I'm not going to move until he gets to X, Y, or Z. Ice hockey, you're constantly shifting, moving, and adjusting your angle to like, protect the net and get some net coverage going. So I think it's Like if you got kids that are doing both as a goalie, let them play out and roller. Don't make them
Yeah.
play goalie. You know, like
Yep.
I get it, they're hard to find, but make some other kid who's, you know, a great skater, make him play goalie or something. But
Now, when I first started playing, again, showing my age, you know, you were talking about the Franklin stuff, roller hockey and street hockey equipment when I was a kid. Well, rollerblades were kind of a new thing at that point,
yeah.
but I was wearing the plastic Milek pads.
Oh
So
yeah.
there was
Oh
a little
yeah.
bit of slide on those
Yeah.
because of the plastic. No foot protection. How I didn't have more broken toes, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I saw a thing the other day. It was like you knew shit was about to go down when one of the kids comes walking down the street with those slung over their shoulder, like it's gonna get serious. Well, I was that kid walking down the street with the Milex, and I had the Milek mask. You know,
Yeah.
oh, it got hit so many times with that thing. Is like getting
You were
punched in
better
the
off
face.
taking it off the face than wearing that thing and getting hit in the face.
Yeah, but you looked so cool with the mask on.
Yep.
I do kind of want to find one of those again, just to like put it on the shelf because that thing was awesome. And then when I got to high school, like one of my buddies had the Eddie Belfour Cooper street hockey set.
Oh yeah.
You know, showing my age again, but the Franklins were kind of out at that point. So let's talk Vaughn. Great company, handmade. And to be in all honesty, like I said, the quality. When I was looking, there were some other companies I was looking at, but it just kept coming back to the quality.
Joe, how could you? Come on.
Right, exactly. But it, like handmade quality. I mean, not gonna lie, Brian's was probably the only other one I considered for the same reason.
Yep.
Because it's handmade quality as well as made in North America. Especially as we were going through a global pandemic and people were losing jobs. That was important to me. That, you know, in some way, when I order the equipment, I want somebody closer to home to at least be doing it. So I was really excited when they showed up and it had the Made in America tags on there too. It was like, all right, cool. But the quality of the equipment that Vaughn has compared to some others, like I've talked to some other people, and I'm going to keep them nameless to protect their cred, but like Bauer stuff looks cool. Like what they're doing with DigiPrint is cool, but he's like, you might get 2 seasons out of them. You know, the CCM stuff, now that Lefebvre's gone, you know, their own way, they're like, they're not going to last more than a couple of years for you. They're like, if you want something to last you another 20 years, you got to go Vaughn. And it's like, that's what I want. But then when we start talking specs, I like the softer pad. Vaughn's one of the only companies I can get that from. You know, so there's that. So I just want to put that out there. There's a reason I still wear Vaughn and pretty much head to toe. I have the Vaughn foam core stick even. So
That's awesome.
Are they still making the foam core sticks?
I got some still on the shelf when I did my null order for last year. So you let me know, send me pictures of what you got and I'll see what we have. If we have something
it
close.
Was funny because I got it off of Pro Stock Hockey. It's a Keith Kincaid stick.
Oh yeah, that would match perfect with the white, red, black. Yeah.
Well, that's like I needed a new stick, and I've been using Warrior, and I love the Warrior stick. And then I saw the red, white, and black Keith Kincaid Vaughn stick. It's like, well, shit. In fact, my Facebook profile pictures from the day I went out the Winter Classic when it was here. Kane Van Gate was in town, and we got together and did a shootout on a outdoor rink, and he was kind enough to take a picture for me with the whole set. If I can get the damn picture up.
How was he? Good guy? Like,
he's
away from
awesome.
the camera and everything. Yeah, that's sweet.
Yeah, he's a super awesome guy. You know, really, really chill. I would say, you know, his personality on the off camera is not too far from his personality on the camera. I mean, obviously the dry humor and everything, but he loves the game of hockey and he loves the people of the game of hockey. Yeah. You know, when I picked him up, the rink I wanted to take him to is Groveland Park in St. Paul. You would love this place. It's got 2 rinks with boards, chain link fence behind the nets.
Yeah.
But around the whole thing, they have this path, a skating path, so you can skate an oval. And then they have this great big area off to the side where you can just do open skate. And then they got another little area for pond hockey with the pond hockey goals.
Really?
And they have a Zamboni, so they'll just clean the ice throughout the day.
Yeah.
You know, so it's awesome. And I play in an outdoor tournament there every year with a group for the love of puck, and it's just this awesome. So I wanted to take them there, but it wasn't open yet. So I found another nice one out in Edina, and you know, we were going back and forth, and he was in town with his now wife because she was doing all the recording for him, and he's like, all right, well, just send me the address and I'll find an Uber because we're going to be going to the airport. And I was like, I've got an SUV, buddy. Like,
Yeah.
I'll come pick you up. I'll save you the $100 and Uber fees. And he's like, okay, are you sure? It's like, yeah. And so like we were packed in that car because I had my hockey bag, he had his, plus all their stuff for the trip. But you know, it's just a very, very cool guy. He's fun.
Wow, this is actually real. Like, this is, I mean, you almost bucket list this to go see this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, I texted my buddy that runs the tournament there. It's usually January, late January, early February. When I find out when it is, I'll have to text you. You might want to come out for that one.
Yeah, I'll send a team.
He would love that. The Groveland Tap is like a block down the street, and me and another goalie, Tara Trailer, she's from the Pittsburgh area. 2-3 years ago, the tournament, we walked into the bar in full goalie equipment and ordered our beers.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, but it's a good tournament. They have kind of like a rec division and then like the competitive one, and the one team that usually comes, the Grizzlies, they're good. They're always in the final. But yeah. It's an awesome rink. Last year was a little different because they didn't open the warming house for us to get ready in because of COVID. So I mean, they had a tent set up with some heaters, but
you still feeling that wind come through there?
Yeah, it was something else. But where I was going with all this, Vaughn graphics. What's your favorite Vaughn graphic?
Man, that it brings up a lot. Like
Sophie's Choice, right?
The tough part, like I instantly think Jimmy Howard, Howie Ice. When I grew up as a kid, like I was a Howie fan since I remember seeing his first game with the Wings. Like he was wearing like P2 Reebok stuff with the plastic clips on it in the National League. Amazing. To when he had the Jimmy Howard iceberg. Now the funny story is we always try to get him to go back to it. He's like, no, I can't go back to that. That's not me anymore. You know, when he got into an SLR pad and had like evolved, like do the Howie Ice, blah blah, and he would just never get into it. I think that to me stands out. Quickies V4 is an iconic look. When he went back to that last year, that was a blast. I wasn't a huge fan of V5, 6, 7. I mean, it's always the offshoots. Like I love the Pulse. I love the Zigzag. I think Cam Johnson's Zigzag always stands out to me. And this doesn't make any sense because it's a youth pad and no one's gonna give a shit really. But when he won with, I think it was Little Caesars or Honda, he had the baby blue with the navy Zigzag that he ordered custom as a kid, and he was playing like 16s or 18s or something.
Yeah,
like that Zigzag's an iconic look. But I think Jimmy Howard has to be. Also, what I wore in high school, which I thought was really, really cool, was the 7700 graphic. You remember like when Carey Price kind of we issued that out as a special order pad. 7700. It was like a little mini swirl with the 2 swirls off the boot.
I
wore that through high school. That was the best.
Yeah, that was a cool graphic. That was when I really liked playing around with the customizer on. You know, I love that. Who is it? Linus Hallmark is going with the Byron Dafoe tribute. Unfortunately, it's on a Bauer, but like those star graphics were pretty sweet back in the day too.
Yeah, I got a lot of requests about doing those, and we've thought about it, and it's just, you know, somebody's got to commit to wanting to do one. We can't just do one for nobody. It's interesting. Like, I'm not going to get up and bash or say anything bad about anything, but like, it's interesting what people will do with other graphics. And I get there was an iTech version that got knocked off. But yeah, there's something interesting about the way that works, because I think at the end of the day, it circles back and people know. Like Moger texted us, he goes, what's that about? Like, you know, and like people, you just know like who did it, and it always comes back. And I like it because I think where social media goes for companies doesn't. I think it needs to be less polished. Um, I don't know if I'll get crucified for this, but I'm a bit of a Stoolie guy. Through
Yep.
not through like the stuff that people think, like pardon my take, like I listen to a lot of comedy podcasts, but
Yeah.
not studied, but I've watched a lot of their behind the scenes and the way they do it, and everything they try to give you. I think people think it's all real, it's very polished, but they give you something that's raw, feels like
Hmm.
you're behind the scenes. And like when I forgot what happened, was it Kirk? Maybe it was the Kirk set, but I wanted to stir the pot and I was just like, like OGs remember or something like that. And I posted the pic of Kirk after somebody had gotten their, tribute set or whatever.
Yeah.
And I still remember, I think people were sending DMs and everything, but they couldn't post because they're too polished and they couldn't respond in that way. And it was funny because we're a family company. We all run the social, like there's a lot of people that have hands in that, and it's just we can do what we feel is correct. And I think that's the shift that you have to have, is be real with the people and just
Yep.
kind of have back and forth. And we're not going to slander anybody, but like you remember who did the real, the first stars, like what I
Yeah.
mean? So
Yeah. I think people forget even Eddie Belfour with the Stars, had so, that on the, I think it was the V1 or V2 pads, he had the star cluster. I mean,
yeah,
those were awesome at the time. When I was at St. Mary's, I was always wanting to upgrade to the Vaughn V1s with the star graphic. That would have been my senior year, but in fact, um, not Rogalski, Ryan S. He was a freshman, and
Esther, yeah.
he was there at the same time as me, and he got the V1s, but he did like different colors on each one. They were kind of
He one of
goofy.
the first ones to do the like asymmetrical?
Yeah, and I remember something was up with my pad. Like one of the top straps had come off, and I needed to get it fixed. So for intramurals, I borrowed his, and it was like right when the thigh rise came out, and he had like a 3-inch thigh rise on a. I was wearing a 34. These were like a 36 with like a 4-inch thigh rise. They probably came up over my hips. I was like, "How do you skate in these things,
Yeah,
Esther?"
yeah.
And he's like, "I don't know. I love them." But yeah, it's like, oh my god. But that was the first time I wore what kind of
A
the V.
newer pad.
Yeah, the V1s were they changed goalie pads at the
Yep.
time. And the first time I was like, I need a pair of these. I mean, 18 years later, I finally got a pair, but I got the V9 instead of the V1s. But yeah, it's like, wow, these are awesome.
We Weeksy brought that up, and he talked about how the way Weeksy tells the story is incredible. But shout out Weeksy and his first kid, Princeton
Yeah,
Anthony Weeks.
that was the greatest breaking news video of his.
Yeah, he definitely kept that trend going. But like he talked about it, he's like, like the V1 really shaped where pads are today.
Yeah,
Changed everything because it was the first true butterfly pad that was made for you to go down, seal the ice, and do what you got to do. Obviously, there's been evolution since then, but yeah, it's that V1 was really, really a game changer.
well, I think even if we look at like what Bauer did with the Odin pad and everything, it's all an evolution of that V1 pad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's where it all stems from.
Yeah,
Like you
it's
look at the family tree there, who's first at the top, great grandpa's up there. So,
yeah,
um,
exactly. And I think what's also I think awesome about Vaughn is we've seen it. In fact, we just saw the release with JRZ that they're going to stop making equipment. That there's been these brands over the years.
they said that.
Yeah, because they're focusing on making bags, and I think it was yesterday I saw it on social. They're focused on making bags and skate steel.
Huh.
Uh,
Interesting.
but there's been some of these brands, even a brand like Heaton. I mean, obviously we know why Heaton went away, but that was kind of a brand that you felt they could have continued the company. Um, but Vaughn has just always been one of the stalwarts. Bauer, CCM at a time, iTech, they might get more of the guys in the pros, but Vaughn is just consistently there. They've weathered the storm.
Yeah, the thing is, I mean, at the end of the day, it's really incredible where we are because it started out of a garage in Pontiac, Michigan. I don't know a comparable place in Minnesota, but Pontiac is not, it's not Detroit, but it's a tough town.
Yeah.
It is a very tough high school to go to. Mike went there and started making chest pads out of a garage and would have people come measure them and build that. And now he's still the guy that's in building, right? We're a globally known company, and to do that since 1981 and not be owned by any more major corporation, for Mike to own his building outright, and just the way we take care of people, it's it really is something special to be a part of. And a lot of people ask me like, "Oh, you ever thought about?" I couldn't do it anywhere else because there's so much pride in what we do. We face our everyday battles, but there's so much pride, and we have, you could call it grit, you could call it jam, but we stick to our guns on stuff where you can see there's a lot of things that are changing. We are adapting, and where we're at taking our gear and everything like that, we're doing catching up. But where we stick to our guns and making sure that what we build for you, myself, a AAA Little Caesars kid, a kid playing high school in Minnesota, that kid that won the God, I'm gonna butcher that award, but whatever the award is for top high school goalie.
Oh yeah, you're talking Ben Dardis.
Ben Dardis.
Yeah, and
Unique name.
yeah,
Dardis, yeah.
and he plays at Matamidi, which is where, or played. He graduated. That's where my kids go to school.
I couldn't
Um,
pronounce that when he won it. I had talked to Berkey, Adam Burkle, Minnesota guy,
yeah,
Stillwater pony. His jersey's up in that rink apparently.
yep.
Won at Denver, Natty champ. I don't know how I said it, but I butchered Mato Medi like really
So,
bad. He just started making fun of me for it.
so Minnesota has a lot of really unique city names, and a lot of them are Indian names. So
Yeah,
you think of White Bear Lake. Matamidi is actually on the east side of White Bear Lake, and
okay.
Matamidi is Indian for white bear.
Yep.
But then there's New Ulm. Many people who aren't from here call it New Ulm because that's how they see. There's just all these different
Yeah.
Indian ones where it's like, all right, let's see how good you are with these. It's kind of fun when the local news stations get somebody to fill in on a weekend because they're giving them kind of a tryout to see if yeah, we're going to bring you in, and they'll make them do the weather or something and throw in these hard to say cities, just see how bad they butcher them. But yeah, Matamidi is one of the harder ones to say, but yeah, it's Indian for white bear.
Well, at least I'm not the only one that gets cooked, and I'm not doing it on, local TV and a news station, which is
Yeah,
even worse.
yeah,
But no, where we're at as a company and what we do, the one thing that we have found is it doesn't matter how many guys we have in the NHL. At the end of the day, we work on finding the perfect balance to have and service the right amount of pro guys and make sure
yeah,
they get what they need. And we'll never deny anybody. We'll always make sure they're taken care of if they need help. But also, a big part of this that nobody thinks about is how does it affect our retail? Like,
mm-hmm.
we want to make sure that we're able to provide gear for consumers across the board, whether it's they need recreational equipment like an import version, that's a price point piece, or they
Mm-hmm.
want domestic stuff. So much of that has to go into the business where people just think we give stuff away, and like teams aren't paying for it, where pro teams order all their equipment for their players,
Yeah,
right? Like that's
they
all
pay for it.
ordered and paid for. And at the end of the day, we just want to make sure that we find the right balance of, like, we want to take care of everybody else, but we also want to have guys in the NHL to show that what we're doing and what we're developing is working, right?
Yep,
There's something to you can't have nobody there. You can't not have a guy in the NHL because people are going to say, who's wearing it? Like, that's still a question.
right.
But at the same time, when kids go into stores, they're asking what's cool. Well, I know I've been seeing on my TikTok or my Instagram that this, and this have come out. I want to go see that at the store, right? So, like, figuring out how to work all that is very interesting. But we stick to our guns, and we're a blue collar company. And at the end of the day, we're still making stuff out of Oxford, Michigan, which is just north of Pontiac.
Yeah,
Mike's still in there every day. So when we got to lace blockers, we'll take a day to lace all the blockers because that's pretty easy. He'll sit down at a sewing machine and he'll tack down the thumb so the blocker sewers can keep sewing blockers. That's who we are. We are. If you don't have anything to do, grab a shovel, pitch in. Find a
yep.
place. If you're not busy that day or you've been caught up, that's awesome. Find something to help out. Find a way to help out. Right?
Well,
Pitch in.
like my dad was a fireman for 30 years in Chicago, and
Mm-hmm.
he worked his way up. He became a battalion chief, but when he was an officer, he was a lieutenant captain, and I went to work every chance I got with him because you talk about an upbringing. You go to the firehouse in the south side of Chicago, as a 13, 14-year-old kid, you're going to get an education.
You're gonna see some shit.
Yeah, seeing things we never told mom about. And it was funny because when mom was toward the end there, dad and I were telling some of the stories, and she was just looking at us like, what? And I said, well, mom, I'm telling the story now because I know you're not going to get up and hit me. And she just started laughing. But God, where the hell was I going with this? Too many hockey pucks to the head. Mike being there and not just like, oh, I'm the guy in charge, I sign your paychecks. Him, getting his hands dirty, doing the work goes a long way, because when my dad was an officer, he could have just said, you do this, you do that. And, I had got a message the other day from somebody, and they're like, your dad was respected because, he was in charge, but he wasn't above anybody from doing the dirty work. He said there was the time he demanded they were doing CPR and somebody waiting for an ambulance, and it's a 5-man crew. So, the 4 guys were taking turns, 5 minutes. And they're like, he demanded to be in the rotation. And we're like, no, you don't have to be. You're the captain. He's like, no, I'm a part of this team. This is how it works. And, Mike probably got that from, being a Detroit guy and being around the auto industry. I remember one of the days I went to work with my dad, we went to the Ford Taurus plant on the south side near the Indiana border. And they're giving us a tour of the place. And the guy said, all of the management, up to a certain point, but almost all the way to the top at this plant, you do not get to that position without doing all of the jobs below you. At that plant, you come in at the bottom and you literally work your way up. And they said that was really effective because they knew if one of the white shirts came down, looked at something and said, you should be doing it this way, they listened to you because they knew you did that job.
Yep.
They knew you knew what you were talking about. And it's probably the same with Mike. He knows if he comes by somebody's sewing, he's like, you need to, work on your stitching here or there. They trust him because he's done it. He understands it. And that's probably why Vaughn has that work, not work ethic, but that closeness in the
grit.
Grit. Yeah. Grit and that closeness of the company. I mean, I've seen some of the posts about people, it is a family there, which, and it all stems from Mike. So my next question I have for you could be termed as controversial, and we'll tell Mike to cover his ears. What is your favorite non-Vaughn graphic?
It kind of changes here and there. Like, oh, you know what? It wasn't my favorite. I'll tell you a pad that almost changed everything for me, though. I guess if that may help, was when I was a freshman or sophomore in college. And do you remember when the Brian 0G came out?
Yeah.
It was the lightest thing that you could get your hands on and touch. Now, their gloves at that time were brutal.
Yes.
I think I can say that. But their gloves at that time back in 2012-13 were brutal. You put your hand in them and it was like closing the old Franklin glove, and it just didn't feel good. But that pad, they figured out how to make a pad that was so incredibly light and felt so good. I wanted the 0G so bad. And at the time, Chris Joswiak was the rep, and I still have, like, if I pull up my Facebook messages now, I have messages from him that were archived from that year when I was in college. I'm like, hey, like, I'm playing club hockey at Michigan State. I think I'm going to get a new set. Can you help me out? Blah, blah. He's like, yeah, just let me know what you want. And then, being in college, obviously I had other priorities and other things money was going towards. So I just never followed up on that. So thank God, right time, right place.
Yeah.
State of Vaughn guy. Could have changed the trajectory and created an alternate universe. But yeah, the 0G pad was one of those creations that at the time I was like, cool, I need this. This is so cool. So in terms of graphic, I'm trying to think of anything else that pops out to me.
While you're thinking, I'll say mine, and it's no secret, mine is the Bauer Reactor 5. Specifically, the way Belfour had it with the alternating black and white stripes. In fact, Ben Goudreau for Team Canada has that tribute set this year. I'm probably going to be talking to him after the tournament to specifically talk about that set. But when I had Eddie on the podcast, I got him to confirm that the story behind those pads is he got them white first with some black accents. And when they came in, he's like, that's just too much white. He could have been, the godfather of the all white. Well, Herbe was, but Belfort could have been right up there with him. So he took a Sharpie in that first set, that those black stripes were Sharpie that he colored those in with. And, so I asked him, I said, now, please tell me it wasn't, the Sharpie like this, and he had to sit there the whole time. It was, the fat head one. And he just laughed and he didn't really confirm it, but he did say, yeah, he sat there with his equipment manager with a Sharpie coloring in those stripes the first time. He goes, after that, Bauer then, put the black on there for him. But to me, if I ever went with the Bauer set, it would be a digiprint of that.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's like there's a lot of, I mean, people didn't like it. I don't like it, but it was nostalgic to it because I remember seeing it all the time. There's a kid out in Anaheim. He has the old RBK graffiti graphic, which I think is hilarious.
I saw that came back.
Like,
yes,
that's just so funny because it looks, it's cool now, but at the time when it came out, it was just like, what look are you going for here? Like, is this a street hockey pad? Then is this like what, So I don't know.
It's so ugly. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's kind of where it's at. And like anything over time, it naturally gets nostalgic, right?
Yes.
So like it gets that little bit of rose colored lens to it. So like it's something cool to see.
That's how the Islanders fisherman jersey is. I remember when that thing came out, I bought one because I was like, this is not going to last long, but it is so ugly. It is awesome.
Yeah.
And the reality is the Islander logo itself with the fisherman is actually really cool.
Yeah.
But those colors and the way they had the flowing, it
was like 90s graphic designing, right?
Oh God, some of those 90s jerseys are like, I look back at it, just the 90s in general, and I'm like, what drugs were these marketing and designers doing? But actually the FDNY hockey team has taken the fisherman logo and kind of changed it a little bit to fit their stuff. They changed that fisherman hat to be a fire helmet and stuff, and it's pretty cool. I do want to order one of those shirts because I like supporting the FDNY hockey team for the rivalry series. In fact, I don't know if you've seen it on YouTube. There's a great documentary called I think Rivalry City, talking about the FDNY NYPD hockey game.
Yeah,
how, they've had the battles. One of my teammates from St. Mary's is actually on the team, Jimmy Becker. He's the one that ran the NYPD goalie in the ESPN game, and he lost an edge, and it is what it is. But okay, so we've been talking a while. I apologize. I hope you're good on time. I feel like Kevin Woodley, how you doing on time? In fact, Woodley, when I had him on, he was the only guest to ask me how I was doing on time, and was like, "It's my show, Woody. I'm okay."
That's beauty. That's Kevin.
Yeah. So I end every episode with a list of 10 questions. They're the same 10 questions I've asked every single guest. So those bantam goalies, women Olympic goalies, to Olaf Kolzig, who's the episode before you for my 100th. But before I get to those, I have to ask a question. What is your fascination with the Lani Kai? Because I have been there, and I don't know how that thing survived the hurricane, because it's not up to building code. We know that.
It withstands the test of time. I mean, my one of the best stories I told for our like scary story episode, which weren't really scary, they're just goofy stories.
Yeah.
I almost got arrested in front of the Lani Kai.
Yeah.
So like I never went there for spring break. It was just the one tournament, and then when you go back occasionally in Florida, and you're in the Fort Myers area, you got to go for a little rum runner and have a time.
You got to get in that dirty ass elevator and go up to the rooftop.
Everything's sticky. It's all wet. There's sand everywhere. It couldn't be a more disgusting place.
The fact that they made people wear masks in that establishment during COVID, it was like, if they weren't sick before COVID coming here, they're not going to be sick now.
You're going to get stronger being on the Lani now than any other shot or anything else that you could take. You lick a wall on the Lani, you're basically indestructible. You're pretty much safe. But it's just it's an incredible spot. And coming from college, like, you're just, back when I was younger, you're used to just dumpy, sticky, wet liquor everywhere. The bar, like you put your arm down and then you got to peel yourself off of there. Your flip flops just as you're rocking around the bar, and everyone's spilling and everything's a mess. We're just kind of used to that. Now I'd rather not,
Yeah.
like if Cam Johnson wins, another cup, we might go down and have a couple drinks, but most of the time you kind of avoid being at the Lonnie. But yeah, it's a funny spot to be at, and it's one of those places where, like you said, when you see it, you see it, and for it, it's burned in your memory. You're never gonna forget, right?
Oh
So
yeah, I mean, and if you haven't had to take antibiotics after visiting the Lani Kai, you're lucky.
you're fortunate, you're a fortunate soul.
Yeah, because we had friends. Every summer she would go down to Fort Myers, and her son wound up going to school down there and played for the Junior Everblades. And so we went down there, for my birthday a couple years ago and rented a house. So they're showing us all around. She's like, we got to go to the Lani Kai. And we went up there for sunset. That's why we went to the Lani Kai, which that's probably why it's still around. It's because it's got one of the best views of the beach for sunset. But like, go a little further down the road to the Junkanoo, which unfortunately got just wiped out. And it's like, that was actually probably a cooler bar, a little more laid back, walk right out onto the beach with your drink. It's like, all right, but yeah. I get why people go to the Junkanoo. I don't get why they go back.
For sure. I actually, I got one more funny story I just remember about the Lonnie was there were a couple dads with us on a tournament trip one time. We were down there and we were out at the beach, and like this is in college, and we're having drinks and stuff after we had lost. One of the dads bought a pair of shots for himself and the other dad. The one dad bangs home the shot. They cheers, tap the table. He takes it. The other guy slowly kind of pulls it, slowly taps the table, and he's had a couple too many, throws it back. And when he did it, he did the whole head throw back, like with it, like to really sink it back to the throat and get her down quick. And then you just kind of watched him like throw the head bob around. He just looked down because this was out the outdoor bar where like there was a stool. He looked down into the sand, put his forehead against the bar, just like this, and just everything that was inside was on the beach. And that's the Lani Kai. Like that's what it is. And it's like you can't see that shit anywhere else. This is the best.
Well, the thing about Fort Myers too is like you've got all the retired people that are down there. You got these old, overly tanned,
leathery bag
men and women, and the guys are wearing speedos.
Yeah.
And the women are wearing swimsuits they should not be wearing either. Like
greased up, oiled up, ready to slide across the pavement.
Right.
Yep.
Like it's a place I'm glad I went and visited, but I looked at my wife. I'm like, I don't know if we'll be coming. Like, we might drive through Fort Myers, but we might maybe go to Sanibel. We might go to some of the other. We're too old for Fort Myers. We're too old and too young. We're in that in between area for Fort Myers.
It's all time and place, right?
Exactly. But it was fun. We actually got a really good breakfast in some strip mall. It's like the weirdest little place, Fort Myers. All right. So the questions: what is the craziest coaching moment from your playing days where a coach just lost it?
I've thought about this one a long time. So high school coach, no one's going to listen to this, so we don't have to name names. My friends might though if you clip this. So high school hockey senior year, kind of just having a tough go. I had some stuff going on at home mentally. I never figured out my shit, and I didn't understand. Like I was always tense my senior year because of the coaching, and it was always constant, like one of those where like you're looking at the bench, like I'm gonna get pulled. So you can never really just sit in and like jam. And we had 3 goalies. It was a mess. No excuses though. I'm just not good. Anyways, we're in a high school game, big game. Guys running down the right wall, and I remember exactly how. I don't know how I'm so photogenic about this moment. But I can smell it. I can feel the rink. I can feel the people on the left side of me. Guys running down the wall in the first period, right side coming down, and he gets inside. Like he might be at the blue line, just inside the blue line, fires a wrister. No big deal. I was so scared because of me making a mistake would lead me to not playing or getting screamed at.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, just take it off your face. Like I can do one of these. It's far enough away. Boom. I'll deflect it, put it in the corner. We'll keep going. Easily could have got my hand up. Should have caught it. Freeze it. Shut
Mm-hmm.
down that play and we get going. They didn't score. At least I don't remember that part. I don't think they score. We got out of the zone and we kept moving. Team loads off, end of the period. Like this is like there's 2 to 3 minutes left in the period. Everyone clears the bench. I'm getting off, going to the locker room. And my coach looks at me and he was like 5'7", thicker guy. I'm kind of getting to that point, so I can't make any comments. Very bald, very, very bald, and looks at me and he just starts screaming. He's like, "What are you even doing out there? You're taking it off the bean. Are you even awake out there?" And like, I am, but I was so scared to make a mistake that I couldn't. My hand froze, and I said, "Just take it off your face." And like I'm a short guy, so I've been, you learn.
Yeah.
You see those NHL goalies. I think that's ridiculous. Like learning to deflect clappers off their face, like you're gonna get a head injury. But anyways, you learn how to manage stuff and
Yeah.
look it off and whatever.
I mean,
I
we've
thought that
all
was the
done this
play.
with our head to stop a puck. It's like it's
Yeah,
coming there.
yeah,
My head's already here. This is
yeah.
it's
But it
easier.
was far enough away. I should have caught it, deflected it, and he just started chewing out. "You took it right off the bean. Are you even looking? What are you doing? Do I need to yank you?" And I just stayed outside the locker room. I'm like, I'm not even going in there. Like I ended up finishing the game. We ended up winning. It wasn't a big deal. I don't know if that was the Dakota game where we won the league and it was my senior night, but I don't know. It was insane. Assistant comes out. He goes, like he just wants to make sure you're focused. I'm like, I yelled at the assistant coach because I had to unleash. I go, I am awake. I'm paying attention. But the way everybody is about when we were playing there, you're on pins and needles to make a mistake. Where none of us are going to the NHL. None of us are going to play junior hockey. We're all just here to do our job. And
Mhm.
it's known that I compete 100%. But like the environment we're in, you can't succeed like this. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. No. We've all had those, not altercations, but shouting matches with coaches.
yeah.
Now it was funny. My coach freshman sophomore year of high school, he was going to school to get his doctorate in psychology,
Wow.
and we were not a good team. Actually, going into freshman year, we're doing power skating, everything, like looking around at the other schools and the talent they had. Like we had the most talent,
Yeah.
but we had individual talent. We didn't have team talent. So freshman sophomore year Catholic League play, we went 138-1. That was, and me and my goalie partner, we're seeing 60 shots a game on average. So like that, my coach, like, thank God he was going to school to get his doctorate in psychology, because he's like, I saw pretty quickly that we weren't going to win a lot of games, so I had to find a way to still make it fun, keep you guys interested. And he goes, that's where that psychology training came in. But he lived 2-3 blocks away from me, so you could still do this back then. He would pick me up for practice all the time, and even some games when Dad was at the firehouse and Mom was working. And you talk about having the rink shrink. I literally had one in my coach, and we still talk to this day. But some of the times we've reminisced about it, where it's like, why weren't you pulling me? Why weren't you yelling at me in those situations? He's like, you couldn't handle it in that situation. He's like, but then the other times when you could, then I yelled at you. He's like, yeah, that's fair. But he likes telling the story. I was a huge Eddie Belfour fan. And morning after he was traded, we had a game, and he starts me, and I let in 6 goals in the first period. Now, some of them I should have had, but it wasn't a terrible period. We were just playing the best team in the league. But so he pulls me, and at the end of the year banquet, he goes, yeah, I learned one thing this year, not to start Joe the day after Eddie Belfour has been traded, because he wears his morning band over his eyes, not over on his sleeve. I was like, damn, that hurts.
Yeah. Deep cut.
Yeah. So next question, what's your favorite all-time goalie mask?
Oh, masks. You know what the tough part is? I'm not a huge mask paint guy. Kyle's obviously he's my go-to for that. Let me think
Yep.
though. I mean, first one that comes to mind is Quick. I'm trying to think of all the guys that I loved. I mean, you want to talk about some really cool ones back in the day, like not back in the day, shit. When I was in high school, coming up through college, the Red Wings did a great job with all those Winter Classic, Christmas. Like, do you remember
Yes.
all those?
Jimmy
Those
Howard's Christmas mask with the gingerbread stuff.
gingerbread man, like those were always cool. Back when Peter was there, he was getting those too.
Yep.
Those were incredible. Let me think. Iconic. I love to see it, but I hate it at the same time just because it's not us. But Otter's Otter is always
Hmm.
really fun. That's a fun play on that on his stuff currently. Nedeljkovic's toque mask I think is really cool when the details done properly. The
Yep.
toque look, the knit look is very, very fun.
Yep.
Um,
It's a great look, but I feel like too many young kids are going with it.
yeah, you can't do it. It's like you do that one, like let one guy do that and then we move on.
Right now, it's probably when you were younger, the Steve Shield, you know, old goalie mask on the current goalie mask. I
Yeah,
I
with the
think
ears and stuff. Yeah.
yeah, which Todd Miska, he was the one that did that for Shield, and he lives not far from me. And I actually got to interview him for an in goal article I wrote about him, and he talked
Very
about it. It's
cool.
such a cool mask. Whereas like, but so many people, it doesn't make sense for everybody to do it. It's been done nice. I think Price had the Jacques Plante version. Like, there's ways of doing it without it being the same one over and over.
Yeah. You know who's
Yeah,
got a really iconic too, which looks brutal, was Marty B's. Like
yeah,
the way the dangler was and just the devil, and it was just so basic but so iconic. It's
yeah,
one of those that really stands out to you. You know
and
what's funny? The Hasek, the Osgood, being a Detroit kid, like that's just
yeah.
that awful helmet that Ozzy wore with the brutal HM 130, and then Hasek's goofy just
HM30. Yeah,
yeah.
I wore a Hasek helmet in college for a year because I got a really good concussion my freshman year, and
Oof.
it was because I had an old Eddie mask that was too big, so I was like, you know what, I need a new helmet, and so I went and got the Hasek helmet. I loved it. It was light. The peripheral vision was amazing, and I didn't wear like Hasek, didn't wear a dangler or anything. Um, whole time I wore it, not an issue. First game back with this mask here, which that was a Coho Heaton extended
Chin.
chin, get a puck right up underneath. It was at practice, and I just laugh. I was like, of course. I go a
Yeah.
full year without anything, and the only reason I went back to a mask is I got another concussion when I took a slap shot right to the Cooper, cracked the Cooper, and my parents and coaches were like, "It's time to go back to a mask." It's like, okay, but yeah, yeah, it's a good look. I mean, you see it on the message boards like GGSU. Guys love it. And S has a carbon fiber version of it. Who else was I talking to? Oh, Dusty Carlson's wearing one now too.
That's great. That's
Um,
great.
which flirts me because he used to have a Warwick in high school. It's like you had one of the best masks, and now you're wearing one of the worst masks.
Yeah.
Um,
It's I know, I mean, I grew up like when I started because the whole Hasek shit. I was wearing like not a C like the Hasek one. I was wearing a CCM helmet, and I just took a big player cage and I just dropped it around. I didn't have any ear guard like the
yep.
ear extension on the cage. I just had my plastic ear guards and I wore that. And when guys started shooting harder as I got older into like seventh grade and stuff, my dad's like, no, you kind of gotta wear a mask. But the problem is I have a huge head too. So like finding stuff that fit the player helmet with the cage combo fit, finding a
Yeah.
mask in store where my face wasn't like here, in the mask, it was impossible until I found an Eddie and my dad paid top dollar for it. But I had a
Those-
PGD before that, which was brutal. But the Hasek one, it breathes nice. It keeps you cool. It's
yeah.
just not safe. Like at
Right.
the end of the day, getting smacked with a puck on the cheek on that and that chin just, driving that force through you,
Yeah.
not the way you want to wear it. So,
Yeah, yeah. Those Eddie masks were great masks too. It was a
yeah.
shame to see them go. So, what is your favorite rink that you've played
I'm trying to think of some of the out of state ones.
at?
Um, I think there's a rink here. It's called Oak Park, and it's got the old classic barn feel. Little Caesars plays out of there.
Yeah.
Your Michigan Brother Rice team plays out of there. Your brothers over there, and it's got the wood stand. The only problem is the stands are brutal. It's like high school basketball stands where there's a
Oh
section
yeah.
that's 10 feet long and it's fenced in, it's low. If you built stands that were nice in there, it'd be really cool. But you look up and you got the wood beams. There's one of those downriver too that's pretty cool. But yeah, I think Oak Park's probably one of the best. But
Yeah.
you know what? It's not cool, but it just has so many memories to me. Macomb Suburban, where I grew up playing high school hockey. Like I
Yeah.
can still picture and I remember when you'd step out on the ice and you go for warm-ups and the songs playing. and the stands, like, I think people think I'm over exaggerating, but the stands were packed. Like,
Yeah.
we had more people coming to our games than people would go to AAA travel games, because you know how that is. It's just your team, your family. No one's really showing out for those. But when you have your high school friends playing on your team, you go see them, and people be going nuts. And I still remember Mac Red, like my senior year, my senior night, last game I ever played for the team before we got, I was gonna swear really bad there. Before we got bent over though pretty hard by Lake Orion, which funny enough, senior year, Calvin Vaughn, Mike's kid, played on Lake Orion. We graduated the same year. After that, Macomb, when we played Dakota for Mac Red and we won Mac Red, my senior night, we went and played them in the playoffs. They crushed us, and they were up like 9-0 going into the second. After 8 goals in Michigan in high school hockey, if you're up by 8, after the end of the second period, the game's over. My last senior year, my last year of hockey, I didn't even get to touch the ice because they had the other kid going. And we got ripped up. I think final score is probably like 10 or 11 by the time we got mercied, 10-11 to 1. And then we got off the ice. And then Calvin, Mike's kid, and Mike was on the coaching on that team, ended up making a run to like semis or something like that. Lake Orion was really good that year. But yeah, that was a funny cross. Before I even know who Mike was, I was playing against him, and then they just ended my hockey career. So thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Well, it's funny you say that. So I had one of my college buddies, the other kid that was born in Korea and adopted here. He was playing high school hockey for Hermantown. He's in the state tournament, and they're playing Benilde St. Margaret. The Benilde St. Margaret goalie is Dave Rogalski, the
Rogie. Wow.
Yeah. And so Rogie beats Nolsey and ends his high school career. And then Rogie goes, he starts playing junior hockey down in Texas, and Knowles comes to St. Mary's, and we're on the team together. And then junior year, we're at tryouts, and Rogie is there. Or no, it was senior year. Senior year, Rogie's there, because it was my senior year that Rogie and S came in, and Knowles was just like, "You got to be kidding me!" And so he's like, "Not only did Rogalski end my high school career, but he ended my college career too," because he got his spot. He's like, "This is just ridiculous." Now, I want to get Rogie on my podcast, but Devils don't like their coaches talking, so like I'm gonna have to wait. But it's like, "Oh, Rogie, I gotta get your side of the story," because if you've ever talked to him, he's super nice guy, low key, like. Just let him go out, hunt and fish and play hockey, and he's happy.
Yeah.
I've talked about it before. I mean, my time at St. Mary's, we had a lot of smart goalies. If only our bodies would have done what our minds told us to. Because
you can think the game, but man, physically, my body's not there.
Because I mean, we had Rogie, he's a Stanley Cup champion now as a goalie coach. We had S there. We had some smart goalies, just maybe not physically talented goalies. So the next question, what is your favorite stick that you've used?
Favorite stick. God, do you remember back when they were printing like USA and Canada, and they had all those different graphics on? I think there was Shearwoods.
Yeah.
I had a couple of those. Those are some of my all-time.
Okay.
I think they were way too big for me, but I was like, oh my God, I need the USA one, because I had those USA Franklin pads at the time. I'm like, this is going to look so sick.
Yeah.
And as a kid, I got one of those, and that was one of my favorites. And actually, I was one of the only kids, I think, in Michigan, back when Vaughn was making sticks. Pirani's had 2 of them, and I used the Vaughn stick to complete my 7700 setup. And it looks pretty sick. So gold outline. Yeah, those weren't bad. Those were based off, I think, the Montreal build. So those lasted a long time too.
Yeah. No, I like my Vaughn stick. It's awesome. I am using a Warrior right now just because I saw, again, on Pro Stock Hockey, they had a Colin Delia Warrior that had a trigger grip. And I've been wanting to try a trigger grip. So I got it, and I'm liking it. It's about 3 inches shorter than I typically use, but I was been hearing on In Goal, like shorter paddles, a good thing. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to try it out. I like the trigger grip. I still like the taller paddle. But what's nice is now that I have one with the trigger grip, if I get a new stick that doesn't, I just use that other one as my
You have a template. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a template for get the router out. Boom, there we go. Because that was always my thing. I was scared to cut it wrong. Well, now I have a template.
Yeah, yeah, that's once you have one and you like because you could trace it out on paper and you have it forever. You save
Yeah.
that wherever you need it. But funny story about sticks. I meant to bring this up earlier. So you talked about using a foam core and everything. I have a foam core and a composite. I have a foam core with a baby blue logo for obvious reasons, and I
Yeah.
have a composite that I really like. But I always use the foam core just because it's better style. So it's all about the look at the end of the day. Because I'm not stopping pucks. I just got to look good.
Well, it's funny you say it. There's a pro shop across the street from Southwest Ice Arena where I played most of my youth in high school hockey,
Mm-hmm.
Hockey Unlimited. It was run by a guy, Linus and his son, and they were both goalies. So like it was the place to go for goalies in Chicago because of that reason. In fact, I mean they carried K goalie equipment. They had everything, and they even had their own white label stuff, ice gear.
Really?
Yeah, so they had ice gear. My goalie partner in high school actually had it, and he loved it. Um, but Linus would always say, "It doesn't matter how good you are; it matters how good you look." Because he was always trying to sell us stuff.
Yep.
But that was his thing. He's like, "Doesn't matter how good you are; you just got to look good. You look good, you're going to intimidate people." And it's funny because as kids, you'd have that goalie come out, and like the latest and greatest stuff. You're like, "Oh, he's going to be good." And now when you get to the beer leagues and when you see a guy like myself walk out with stuff from the 1900s, they're like, "Oh shit, this guy's probably good."
Yeah.
He doesn't care about how he looks. It's kind of funny on how that changes over time. Um,
Absolutely.
so we're almost halfway through the questions. What's your favorite youth hockey memory?
Youth hockey. You know what? I think there's a couple of them, but back when we were doing roller and ice and we'd go on the summers and we'd go play roller and go to national champion or the natty tournaments and stuff like that. We went to Buffalo and Mississauga and going to Buffalo and we were staying at like this haunted hotel. It wasn't even about the hockey. We were running around like and we were looking up all these ghost stories and stuff and
Yeah,
we were doing stuff that kids do and playing in like the game room and like hanging out with other kids and all those kind of actually no, we'll take it back. I don't even remember how old I was. I think I was like 12, maybe 13. We were at a hotel in Detroit for I think it was Detroit for a natty tournament at Taylor Sportsplex and we were playing mini sticks in the hallway, of course. And then these kids that I don't we assume they were from Canada, maybe they said they were from Canada. Like, "Oh, you guys are playing mini sticks," and we started playing, and it was the most intense mini stick game I'd ever had because we didn't know these. It was like, like it's like playing pickup hockey against strangers, except you're kids. So you're like, oh, like you've already aligned yourself. Well, these kids are Canadian. We got to run the show here, and we got to put these
yeah,
kids through the wall. It was like throwing bodies. It was more physical than any game we'd ever played in our life at that point because we're 12 years old. We're just banging bodies and throwing styrofoam balls down the hallway.
yeah.
So yeah, that was one of the best.
So you talked about mini six in the hallway. So my son, he's a baseball player, doesn't play hockey. And if we had house league hockey in Minnesota, he probably would have played. But like
Okay.
to him, the commitment to what hockey is in Minnesota, he's like, that's too much for me. And it's like, all right, that's cool. But whenever we play on the pond, he still puts pads on, all that. But so he's a baseball player. We're at a baseball, his first away tournament. We're down in Rochester where the Mayo Clinic is. And all the kids are talking about, all right, make sure you bring your mini stick. We're going to play in the hallway. It's like, these are baseball players
Yeah.
bringing their mini sticks for a tournament. And then we had talked to the boys, like, our tournament's in Rochester, right by the Mayo Clinic. So the hotels down there are a little bit different because you get people who go there for treatment, but stay at the hotels. So like the hotels down there, they all have recliners so that when you get back from the Mayo Clinic, you can
You can
relax.
relax.
And we're like, so it's not going to be a normal tournament. Like we have to be quiet in the hallways. You can't be running around and everything else. They're like, what? And we got to the hotel and like every team from the tournament was there, but there were still patients there. And so the kids were really good. They didn't run around the hallways, but I swear every single kid from the baseball tournament was in the pool. It looked like a spring break cruise ship pool where nobody could move. My son was like, I was in there. I went underwater to get the ball and I got kicked 3 times from 3 different directions. I don't know what was going on. He's like, so I just got out of the water. But
Yeah, it's like the Lonnie Kyan spring break, man. It's
yeah,
packed.
yeah. But it was funny because like, yeah, the pool was just packed, and then you had like all these kids from different teams, like, oh, I can lift this much, or I can. So you had the kids trying to. And then you had the kids playing the claw machine and everything else. And all of us dads were just at the hotel bar. Because the nice thing was when you checked in, you got 2 drink tickets. So it's like beautiful marketing there. Like, yeah, we'll get you liquored up and then we'll just keep taking your money. Yep. But it was like, oh my, what a shit show. So what is the best chirp you've heard on the ice, off the ice, directed at you, directed at Kyle?
Man, it's tough being on the other end, getting put on the spot.
Yeah.
My favorite is when people made fun of each other for what they wore. And it was more or less like, hey, bud, like, did you get dressed did you find all your stuff at Salvation Army? You freeze on me, Joe?
See, that wouldn't have. No, I'm
here.
There
you are. Yeah, that's one of my
that
favorite.
Wouldn't have worked with my team because when I was playing high school hockey, ska was the big thing at the time for my teammates. And
that's awesome.
And they would go to the thrift shop to buy because that was the cool thing. And and because I went to Brother Rice, we had to wear a shirt and tie to school and to games and everything else. So it was like, why are you guys going to the thrift shop for the clothes that I literally didn't change after school because this is what I wear to school. This is what I wear to games. And they're like, oh, to be cool. And like the one kid, he'd get these goofy sweaters to go over his shirt and tie. And I'm like, I would get my big old Sony Walkman on my side and put the headphones on because I didn't want to listen to all the trumpets and everything else playing that was coming out of the boom boxes.
The crazy part is you got kids now that are doing the gritty post game, but back then you guys went a game and you got kids throwing on ska music and skanking in the locker room. That's hilarious to picture.
Yes. Well, not only like that, but imagine them in their, basically, I'm rather, with their nut cup on and that's it, skanking the ska music in the locker room. And that is my high school experience.
The crazy part is anyone that listens to this, and I think 99% of people won't even know what's ska.
Yeah.
What's that? But yeah, I had a little bit of that on when I was a kid growing up, just with punk music and stuff like that. Ska rolls in.
Hopefully we are introducing a genre to some young goalie and they're like, oh my God, this is now my pregame music.
Just don't wear the clothes. Don't get into the culture. Just listen to the music. Don't fully buy it.
That was kind of my thing. I liked the music, but I'm like, I am not going to hang out with you freaks.
Outside of this.
If I'm a goalie and I'm calling you a freak, that's saying something.
Yeah.
The nice thing about, most of my team being heavy into the ska scene is all right, I feel a little more normal. I feel validated. Although one of my buddies that was into it, he actually, 2 of my teammates had a band. There's four friends from high school. I had a band. 2 of them were on the hockey team, and they put out a CD and they were opening for decent acts when they would roll through Chicago. But now my buddy, I think he's the head of marketing for Goose Island Brewing.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
Funny thing is, even though he grew up in Chicago, he's a Red Wings fan. Lifelong, diehard Red Wings fan. When the Hawks were in Stanley Cups, we were having phone calls where he's like, I'm having this existential, what is wrong with me? I should be excited for the Blackhawks and their fans and the city's but I'm not. I want them to lose. I want to see the misery I was like, I respect you for that because I felt the same way about the Red Wings. As a Cubs fan, I felt the same way about the White Sox when they were winning. He's like, okay, so I'm not weird. It's no. But now the Goose Island has a Blackhawks beer. And and they put out some awesome videos. They got Chelios and Dennis Savard to do some videos and everything else. But TJ is sitting down with Danny Wirtz, who runs the Blackhawks, talking about this Blackhawk beer and everything else. And I sent him a message right after. It's as you were talking to Danny, does he know that you're a diehard, lifelong Red Wing fan? And he responds back to me, he goes, I've been waiting for this text knowing that the video is going live today.
He knew someone's going to give him it.
Yeah. Oh, not only that somebody was going to give him it, but he knew it was going to be me.
Yeah.
But TJ, he could have been a goalie with his personality. We always had practice on Christmas in high school. And so the one year he came out on the ice wearing a Superman cape, He's like, well, I might as well wear my costume on the ice since I can't go trick or treating.
Yeah.
He's skating around. It's just the goofiest SOB. But he did a Blackhawks Red Wings watch party with Goose Island, and they brought in Chelio since he played on both teams. But then they brought in Eddie Belfour and Darren Pang to moderate it. And he's like, this is when it's going to be. You got to come in. I was like, son of a bitch. I forget. In fact, I think I was going to Fort Myers during that time. I think that's when I went. I was like, I want to be there, but I can't. I got other stuff going on. He's like, well, send me whatever you want, autographs. So I sent my Belfour jersey, his rookie card, and
Very cool.
a puck and stuff. And so he signed them and everything. And it was really cool. And then I wound up having Eddie on the podcast. And he's like, yeah, I remember that deal. But one of the cool things is on this rookie card of his, it's from a preseason game. And his jersey, it's number 31.
Yeah.
So Eddie signs the card with number 31.
That's funny.
Like the attention to detail, I was like, that's pretty cool. All right, I'm going to try and keep going. What is the worst post-game beer you've had?
Post-game beer?
Yeah.
To be honest, I'll give you, this is really easy for me. Anything that's like a craft, just because of like my body, and it's an Asian thing, obviously. It's lacking of a protein, because I couldn't figure this out in college because I'd get sick, not from drinking too much, just having a couple, and you get sick and you throw up everywhere and you go into instant hangover. But there's a protein that some Asians, it's a gene thing, whatever, way above my mental capabilities. But I do understand this. There's a protein we lack, or there's an enzyme or something that we lack that breaks down basically what would be hops.
Yep.
Or something in alcohol, where like if I have an IPA or I have something that's like crafty, that's quote unquote, exquisite, I'll go into like the worst hangover mode, where like, you know how like you wake up and you're banged up and you got like a headache and you just feel awful. It happens like instantly, and it won't go away for hours. And I'd rather get, a puck to the eye, no mask on, than deal with that ever again. Like now I know what I can and can't drink, being 29 and going to Michigan State and drinking Monday to Monday. Like you figure that out pretty quick, but you learn what you can and can't have by making a couple mistakes. So like anything that's craft, IPA, special, even like I think it is Goose Island, they make the 312.
Yeah.
Like I was like, oh, those 312s look good, blah blah. Awful. Well, not awful, but awful for me.
Yeah.
Like I can have like one summer shandy before I die. Summer shandies are great. Those it has like good taste, but there's something about it that just messes me up. But yeah.
So no,
like that.
I knew about that because my buddy Nolsey, same thing. But because he rarely ever drank, like 2 sips and he'd be shit-faced.
Yeah.
And so we're freshman year watching the state tournament, and it was great. Freshman year watching the state tournament was like eye-opening to me because I had no idea. And like even in college, teachers are like, oh, you're not coming to class because you're watching the tournament. I get it. You're on the hockey team. Like it was acceptable. Yeah. But that game against Benilde St. Margaret, where Rogie ended Nolsey's career, there was a breakaway on Nolsey. And the guy made a move, Knowles bit, and he slides it between his legs. Every single time they went to commercial, they played that clip.
No.
So, yeah, that next year. And so we're all, good teammates. Every time they're going to commercial and we're sitting there with Knowles, like, oh, you going to stop it this time? Oh, no, it wouldn't. Like every single commercial for an entire week. And he's like, I hate you guys. You're
tough.
The worst. But, so we're like, well, have a beer, get over it. And that's when we all learned about this thing. And like 2 sips. And not only did he like start to get sick, but like he would puff up. Like he was.
It's an allergic. It's an allergic reaction.
Yeah,
100%.
But like his throat wasn't closing up, but like his face would just kind of puff up.
Yeah.
And it was just the funniest thing because like 2 drinks is just the funniest little guy, sitting there drunk, puffed up, and then we're picking out of every commercial break. And
that's a tough go for that poor guy. But no, like I'm way past 2 drinks. You give me some Bud Lights or Bud Heavies and just shots of Jameson. I've learned that anything that's like a higher, it sucks because it's expensive, but higher end liquors,
Mm-hmm.
like I can handle. But you give me some JMO and some Bud Lights, and we're gonna have a time. So,
Well, and so I brew my own beer at times.
oh,
So I,
very cool.
the thing is with the domestic light beers, it's oftentimes they substitute um, some of the grain with rice. So I'm guessing the fact that there's less of that grain, the protein's probably in the grain. So if they're substituting the grain with the
Right.
rice, that's probably why you're able to have more of those domestic light beers versus the better tasting craft beers. But
Yeah, I mean it's just water, but at the end of the day, when you're trying to
yeah,
bury 8 and have a couple shots and go rip up the Lonnie Kai, they go down just the same. You know what I mean?
yeah, exactly. Well, and they're great after a game too.
Yep.
So when you tape your stick, do you go heel to toe or toe to heel?
It's always toe to heel. Always
Okay.
toe to heel. I don't know
Well,
why.
okay, you don't know why. I was gonna
I
say when.
think I thought that going toe to heel would create that little bit of grip when pucks come off. But
Mhm.
obviously when pucks come in at, 80, 90 and they got the spin, your tape doesn't do shit for you. I mean, outside of giving you a little grip rather than having a comp stick, it's going to come off even hotter. So,
It's interesting you say you thought it would give you a little bit of that extra grip because when I talked to Connor Beaupre, the Wildy Bug, and Don Beaupre's son, he goes toe to heel because he likes to play the puck a lot.
yeah.
And he feels going toe to heel, he gets less friction, less grip for the puck to come off the blade.
Huh.
And
Yeah,
I
I mean,
so
it's just one of those things that we do as goalies that like once you've started doing it, you've aligned like psychology wise, your brain's made a
yeah.
connection as to why we do it. It doesn't
Oh,
mean it's always right, but your brain did something.
yeah. Oh, I know why I go heel to toe, and it's twofold. One is I used Christian sticks for a
Okay.
long time, both in youth hockey and in college. We even got them. And if you know anything about Christian sticks, that heel was a sponge and it would just
Yeah.
absorb and it would go like that. And so you had to cover that heel. So when you tape over that heel, that's where I'm going to mess up my tape job. So I rather, if I'm going to mess it up, not have to retape the whole stick and just start that little bit. But then Hasek was Blackhawk when I first started, and he would go halfway up that paddle. So
Yeah.
the sticks out in the garage. My first stick that I owned was a Titan, San Jose colors, because I was
Sick.
playing for the Sharks, and I still have that stick. I had Bobby Hall and Sam McKee to sign it. But
Oh,
you
very
look
cool.
at it, and I have the tape job halfway up that paddle. Heaviest damn stick you'll ever find.
Hey, how can we make it heavier? You got any dumbbells? Tape them to the back of this bad boy.
Yeah. Well, and on top of that, the knob is probably like a Hopi knob, like that big. It's just like, oh my! I laugh looking at that thing now, and it's a straight blade too.
Yeah.
And I was like, Dad, what? Why are you getting me sick with the straight blade? He's like, well, you're still learning. Maybe you'll wind up, being, a left-hand goalie, and if you
Anything could
do,
happen.
yeah, it's like, all right, that makes sense. But it's like, I didn't care. It matched my team jersey. It was a senior stick. I'm a squirt with this senior stick like this, but yeah, should never
what?
owned that stick.
You know what's funny? One time I broke a stick, and the only stick in the rink that they had, like this is mid game, and it was when you're a kid, you only have one. They
Yeah.
bring me a stick, but it's a full right. That's all they had for me to use. And after that, I was convinced, and I just remember this. I was telling my dad, I was like, no, I think I need these because yeah, it deflects, and it was like kind of like a softer curve or whatever. It was like a wedge, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it was a full right, and I was like, yeah, when I get rebounds, I can just scoop them and throw them back into the corner. And my dad's like, you're so dumb, but you know what? If you think that that's gonna help, you can use this as long as you want. And then eventually, 5-hole goal gets let in because stick's not flat because it's not meant
Yep.
to lay this way. And I got out of that quickly. But I remember there's a point in time where I was convinced. I'm like, oh, the backward stick makes more sense because now I can just scoop pucks and throw them away.
Okay. So there was a goalie who played for Fenwick High School when I was in high school.
My buddy went to Fenwick. Yeah.
Yeah, he was playing with Timmy Stapleton. Timmy probably scored a couple goals on me, but we won't go there. But he had the backward stick, and he would use it because when he played the puck, he did the old Andy Moog style of
Flip.
turning it
Go.
over. And when he did that, now he had the curve the way he wanted it.
Yeah.
And he wasn't very good at playing the puck, though. So I'm like, how many goals went in because you had the wrong curve? Just so you might be able to get the puck to your defenseman.
Yeah.
Yeah, my thing with Timmy Stapleton, on Chicklets, he talks about how he would go to these skates with Billy Zito when he was still a player rep. And he's like, yeah, Zito just saw something in me and, started talking to me and got me playing pro hockey. And I'm sitting there, I'm going, between my junior and senior year, I was home skating at Johnny's Ice House. Like I did it was great because I was working an internship at ABC News and I met the guy playing rat hockey at Johnny's. And so he knew like I needed to go to rat hockey in the morning and then I'd come into the station. That was
That's such a
our deal.
Chicago thing is rat hockey. My buddy, one of my roommates from college, my best friend, he said that only Chicago kids call it rat hockey, but yeah, go ahead.
Well, it's because the rink rats are the ones that go to it. That's why it's called rat hockey. So, I'm at rat hockey and Billy would skate with us all the time. He was a fantastic player, played over in Europe and you knew he was good because he had the ads all over his breezers.
Yeah.
But some of his players started coming in at the end of the season and they were skating with us. And I mean, they were nice. They weren't going all out or anything, but one of the guys at rat hockey, he was missing half of his fingers on one hand because of a construction accident. And I knew him, so I was always picking on him, like, you need to hold that stick tighter to get a better shot. And he's like, you're an asshole. We had the one guy I just called Morris because he was like Morris from Slapshot, just talking about the worst stuff, with ladies in the locker room. We had Father Murray, the 72-year-old retired Navy chaplain. Yeah. So Billy winds up getting the ice before rat hockey for his guys and gets a few more NHLers, AHLers come and start skating. And it's like the second week. And they're like, hey, we need a goalie tomorrow. Do you want to come skate? I was like, yeah. So then I spent the rest of the summer skating with them. And so I'm sitting here listening to that Chicklets episode at Stapleton. Like, all right, you skated with Billy and he saw something. And he was like, I skated with Billy too. And he never talked to me. He didn't even ask me to come to his skate. It was Joey Corvo did. And I was like, this is some shit. Like, I almost want to reach out to Zito and be like, so I was just a live shooter tutor for you, like nothing. What's up? Because I skated against Stapleton in high school, and he wasn't necessarily lighting up the league by any means. So there was a kid from Mount Carmel and a kid from Marist that were the ones to watch. So yeah,
that's awesome.
So we're almost, how this goes. You get somebody that starts talking, and the conversation goes, you go.
It's a riff. Right? That's all it is.
What's your favorite number to wear, but also why?
Man, I've been all over the place. Wore 30 in high school. Sometimes I'll wear 33. Sometimes I'll put on 39. I mean, Hasek obviously is a 39. Yep. Patrick was a 33 because he's a psycho, and obviously I am too. So like, just it's the way she goes. But you know what I think is really cool right now? Like one of the goalies I deal with, she's playing Little Caesars boys hockey, AAA. I believe the world in this kid, and I can't wait to see what she does. And she's gonna be big time soon. As she gets older, she's wearing 70. I like that new wave of kids. Yeah. Me and Kyle, I don't know if you heard that one. Me, Kyle, and Evan. I think Evan was on it. We were talking about how it's shifted. Like it doesn't matter now for goalies. Like there's no number. I think Kochetkov wears like, was it Kochetkov or somebody wearing like 60, 63 or something? Yeah. Like there's this new wave where like it's just a number, and that's what it's always been. And you and I both know like hockey's a historic thing, and it's built in tradition and all that stuff. But it's changing now as the world is, and I think it's kind of cool to see kids wearing different numbers. So,
well, do you know the story on why like all the original 6 goalies were number 1?
No.
So back in the day, and I got this from Bobby Hall, so I believe it. Back in the day when teams traveled by train, you were assigned your sleeping berth based on your number.
Okay.
And the lower the number, the bigger the sleeping berth. So they always wanted the goalie well rested, so they gave him number 1. And that's why, you look at guys like Gordie Howe, Bobby Hall, all of those guys had single
9,
numbers.
7, yep.
The best players got because Bobby Hall, I believe his first number was
2.
20. No, it was a double-digit number or something. But when they saw, you're going to be something, now you got a single-digit number. Yeah. So that's why so many goalies, were number 1 because they
Terry Sawchuk.
Yeah. In fact, my favorite Gump Worsley story is the reason he retired is he was scared of flying on airplanes. they weren't traveling by train anymore. So he retired. He's like, nope, not getting on an airplane.
Yeah, hard no.
Yeah. So the last question, because I've taken up over 2 hours of your time already. What advice do you have for young goalies?
Oh, you got another hour?
Sure, I'm good. It's just snowing here. The longer we talk, the less I have to shovel the driveway.
That's what you got kids for, right? Like that's the whole point. You have kids.
I got 2 teenagers. I'm just waiting for them to wake up so I can be like, and it's not deep enough where we need to fire up the snowblower. So it's gonna be all right, Gus. You need to go out and shovel the driveway again.
You want to talk about specs on a shovel? I'm a big long shovel guy.
Oh
right?
yeah, I got one.
You got to go long shovel. You do it as a plow. I see like people like lift and, lift and throw. I'm not a lift and throw guy. I'm a plow guy. You walk it down, you push it, you start in the middle, and you work your way out. But
yeah, when we had our backyard ice rink, I got the big long one for that reason, and so use it on the driveway. And you'll appreciate this. Growing up in Chicago, where you got the sidewalks all the way down and everything. When I was little, my dad started clearing the block because it was a lot of elderly people lived on our block. So he would get out there and shovel when he wasn't at the firehouse. Well, the old guy 2 doors down had an early snowblower, single stage snowblower. And he goes, here, take this. He's like, I'm too old. I can't use it anymore. And you're doing the whole block. Just make sure you get ours done and you can have this. He's like, okay. Well, then I got big enough where I could start doing it. So I would start doing it. I would wake up early before school, get the, block cleared. I would, stay up late and everything else. And I never charged these old people, but I come home from school. There's a couple bucks, in an envelope from the old lady across the street, a couple more down. And that's how I funded buying my own goalie equipment as a kid.
Oh, that's awesome.
Mom and dad, they would buy like my leg pads, but other than that, I bought my own gloves. One of my favorite blockers is actually that Osgood Vaughn with, the V on there.
Yeah.
I remember buying that at Hockey Unlimited, but then there was the days where there were the 2 old ladies, Grandma Kovacs and Marge, that lived across the street. And they were good bakers.
Yeah.
So if it was a good snow, I would get, $5-10 from them, but then they would bake something for me.
Oh,
we had this little entryway in our house. So even if we weren't home, they could open the screen door and put it in there. So it's always like, all right, I got to get home from school before dad does and eats my baked goods.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah. But back to the question, advice for the young goalies.
Advice for young goalies. See, me, because I was so bad in such a head case, I try to look at the mental stuff of an athlete and the way kids think and operate and the pressures they go through. So you could have a goalie coach that works you out, that does 1,000 drills.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes kids have a hard time of thinking and relaxing and just getting into hockey. I'm going to give you a 2-piece. 2, ask your goalie coach to come see a game. I'm very fortunate enough. I'm very extremely fortunate in the fact that the kids that I was coaching or were starting out coaching through a friend, shout out Dave Zubin, have brought me on to be an assistant. So I'm around more. So I get, I don't know how to put it nicely, but I'm compensated for time to show up at games, but because I go to games, I understand, I see what's going on, where I think a lot of goalie coaches, you get privates with a kid and you're going to work. What do you want to work on? And they'll tell you this, that, or the other thing. But to truly get into a kid and develop them, what are they missing in games? And the other thing is, you don't need to, just because a kid makes a mistake on a Monday doesn't mean we're going to spend Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday correcting it. It could be a one-off.
Right.
Just keep working on the overall picture. Now, if it happens, twice one week, and then, for the rest of the month, he keeps having an error with stick control or, a bad read on a line rush, then we fix it. But have your goalie coach come to a game once a month or something. You're paying a lot for private lessons. The least they can do is find some time to watch your game on Live Barn, to whatever, come see you, do anything, spend some time. If they give a shit, they will. But I think the other thing too, that a lot of kids might get caught up in, because I understand hockey parents now. And I think hockey parents, I've talked to parents that have kids that play multiple sports. Hockey parents are different because of the amount we pay for the sport, as you know, Joe. Me and Berkey were talking about it. Some number came out with Minnesota where a kid pays 40,000 for whatever. I don't know if that's the right number, but 40,000 for the season. And it broke down association, coach gets this,
Oh
players
yeah.
get this, resources, whatever. It's an outrageous number. Moving past that, we pay top dollar as parents to get your kids to play hockey. So I think because of what we pay, we expect, especially with now in today's society, we expect value. I want this, I want that, I paid for this, right? And the parents, because of that, outside of what their coaches are telling them and this and that, are putting a ton of pressure on kids to show up and do this and do that.
Mm-hmm.
My advice is every time you get on the ice, you just have to get 1% better. You're
Yep.
not going to jump leaps and bounds in a season. Every time you get
No.
on, just work on trying to be a little bit better, whether it's a skill or your attitude or your focus or listening to a coach or doing anything. You can get better at so many different skills, and that's 1%.
Yep.
And it's not always a tangible thing.
That's great advice, because when I was in college, I ran track one year, and I did it because you had to have PE credits, but if you played a varsity sport, you got credit. So like with hockey, I was like, well, there's one credit, but two of my buddies were running track. It was in the off season. Like, this will keep me in shape.
Yeah.
But I had never run track before and everything else. But so I talked to the coach. He's like, yeah, you can come out. Like, he's like, the great thing about track is it's a team sport, and that the top athletes compete for our team score. Mm-hmm. He goes, but we have enough of you where then there's the rest of you where it's an individual sport. He's like, it'll be the individual sport for you. He goes, I just ask that you show up every day and give maximum effort. And each race you try and set a new personal record. Mm-hmm. I showed up every day. I ran as hard as I could. Some days it didn't look like I was running hard, but I was huffing and puffing. I was giving it my all. In every race, even though I finished dead last, I was one of the happiest guys. I was like Eddie the Eagle in that movie about that. Like, I was smiling because I knew I gave it my best, and I set a new personal record every race. And it was funny because my last race was after I finished finals for the year. So my mom and dad were coming up to move me out. So they drove all the way out to St. Olaf because that's where the race was. So rather than just driving to St. Mary's, the 7 hour drive from their house in Chicago, they had to drive like another 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I ran one race that day. It was the 200 meter, and I was on the outside lane. And I come in dead last. And my dad goes, well, good job. You didn't finish last. I go, Dad, what race were you watching? And he goes, well, there was two people off to the right of you. I said, those were the warm-up lanes. They were just jogging, getting ready for their races, Dad. I came in dead last. And he goes, I drove an extra 2 hours to see that shit. It's like, thanks, Dad.
Appreciate it. Good thing I'm done.
But yeah, the coach is like, hey, like, it's to your point. It's show up and just incrementally get better, because where I was at the beginning of the season versus the end of the season was very different.
Yeah.
And, you're not going to see those incremental improvements every day, but when you look at yourself retrospectively, then you see it.
Yeah. My last tip though, and I just had this conversation with a kid, one of our kids yesterday. And I've had this conversation before because I've dealt with this, and it was kind of like what I talked about earlier, is you have to find a way to not, and you've heard this, somebody said this to you in your lifetime, block everything out. And it's not it's so, if we could all do that and you could tell a person that's not having a great year or whatever, just be happy. We'd be in a lot different world. Things would be great. People wouldn't be as uptight as we all are right now. But what I told them yesterday, is block out what your coach says. Block out what your parents are saying. Block me out. Don't worry about doing anything for anybody else outside of yourself. The reason, and now I understand it's a team thing. I'm not taking away from our team, but the reason we play goalie is it is a self-fulfilling position on what we do and what our abilities are and how we make saves and how we choose to handle ourselves. Yes, we are a part of the team, like you said, but we're at the same time, we're very much on an island. Don't worry about what your coach is going to say, whether you do something right or wrong. Don't worry about what your dad thinks. Don't worry about what the parents are saying. Zone in on what you're doing in the game. Go get the next one. However you want to phrase it. Like a lot of people are go get the next one, make the next save. What can I do to do this? Whatever you do, don't worry about all the outside factors. Play hockey and play goalie for yourself, because there's so much mental shit that we have to deal with, whether it's getting dressed or how we prepared or what we're doing and what we're thinking about. And then if you throw in, oh man, I didn't make that save properly. My goalie coach is going to be upset, or, oh, I didn't handle that rim properly. My D got banged on. The coach is screaming at me. Oh, no. Even if that's happening, practice every time not listening to them, because
Right.
they can chew you out after the game. After the game, look back at everything, review, make changes, and then let it go. Let that leaf go down the river. But afterwards, verify whether or not you had a good or bad game. But in the moment, just worry about doing it for yourself. Go get the next one. Figure out what your mantra is going to be, but don't let all the outside factors of parents, what the scout sees, what somebody else sees affect how you do it, because you're just going to end up in quicksand mentally, and you might as well not even be in the net at that point, right? If you're worrying about
Right.
what everybody else thinks about you, and that goes in life too, right? Like, that's, you transfer that out. Don't worry about what everybody else is thinking. Just do it for yourself and go out and get the next one, and phase out all the negativity or anything that anyone says to you, because you're the one in the net. You're the one that has
Yep.
to handle all the pressure, right? So,
Yeah. No, that's great advice. And, yeah, it's a goalie. And if you're being a little selfish and doing it for yourself, well, if you do it for yourself and you do well, you're still helping the team.
yeah.
So it works out. So, well, we've been talking a while, and because the conversation went well. That's what happens. And I appreciate it.
It's just
So,
riffing. That's all a podcast
yeah,
is.
yeah, it's just goalies talking to other goalies, and I love it. We need more of it. So thank you for taking time out of your morning. Thank you for helping me get that awesome set built and out on the ice. It's been amazing. Every time I go out there and I see other goalies, we're always talking about it, and I sing nothing but praise for Vaughn and you. And so thank you. It's been fun.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on. I was ecstatic because I didn't, again, like, know how that was all going to turn out. So it was a big experiment for us. So I'm really excited the way it turned out. And we'll always be here. Like, that's another big thing about us is what I pride myself on being a part of Vaughn is we always do the service end of things, because yeah, we built it, you have it, but if no one helps you out afterwards, or no one has questions or answers for your questions or response to you, like, it's kind of a wash, right? So you
Yep.
got to take care of people. But I apologize a couple minutes late. Rolling out of bed this morning, a little banged up
Oh,
after last night. So,
don't worry. No.
um, but yeah, thank you for the time. It's cool to be on the other end. So,
Yeah, and you talk about the service. That first year, I had my original Vaughn legacies. After a full year of skating 6 days a week in college, um, one of the straps at the top was coming off, and there was a seam down at the boot starting to come loose. And this is in the early days of email. I found a email on the Vaughn website, and I sent it. And it's like, hey, I got this happening with my pads. What do you recommend? And they said, what's your address? We're going to ship you a box, send them back. We'll repair them. And if we can't repair them, we'll send you a new pair. I was like, well, crap. So part of me's like, I might be getting a new pair of pads here. They did some kind of repair, put a new strap on there, stitched up the boot better than if they were new, in all
yeah,
honesty. And they said, ship both of them back. And so whatever they did on the one that needed the issue, they did the same exact repair on the other pad, just so that I didn't encounter that in the future. And that was service. And I mean, this was almost 23 years ago. And it was just, they paid the postage to ship a giant box out, and then they paid the postage for it to be shipped back to Michigan. And it was like, that right there is what made me a Vaughn customer for life.
we appreciate having you, buddy. And like I said, you need anything in the future, you let me know. All right.
Oh, I will. I'll call Tori and say, Tori, get Ev on the line.
There we go. Fire it
Yeah.
up.
Awesome.
So,
Well, thank you. And where can folks find you and or Vaughn on social medias?
man, if you're not following Vaughn, you're making a big mistake, and you should just end the show
Yeah.
now and just don't worry about it. We're past it. But
Yeah.
Vaughn Custom Sports, check that out at Vaughn Custom Sports. If you can't spell Vaughn, again, we just need to move on. I'm gonna give our other pod a pump here. Between Two Posts podcast, new
Yep.
episodes every Wednesday as well. We talk about goalie stuff, not as well as this one, but we try. That it's at B2P podcast. So Between Two Posts. You can Google it, whatever, search it. And then me, You can catch me at BOMMAR33 Bomber33. I post a lot of garbage, a lot of fake jam stuff, and I just try to talk about how I'm a big blue collar guy and grit, and sometimes we're into gang stuff, and it's all about having fun. I think the other problem is a lot of people take my shit seriously, and a lot of the stuff I post is like jokes, ironic,
Yeah.
not really real. Like when I posted that picture of 3 blockers with my arms up, like that's all funny. Like it's not meant to be taken serious. Or when I posted that we got bought by ESPN, which would never happen, people
Right.
were like, "Oh my god, congrats!" I had people afterwards, weeks, telling me when they'd see me, they'd be like, "Oh my god, Everett, like you blew up! Like I saw they sent you like a table and everything." I'm like, I'm not even on a real desk. I posted a picture of a shitty folding card table, a TV, a small TV monitor, and my laptop. And you think ESPN's sponsoring that? But I think that it's funnier that people think it's real than
Yeah.
anything else. So like I get the jokes either way. But
No,
yeah,
I get them. But
yeah,
yeah, no, thanks for
good.
adding the podcast one in there too, because I was going to mention that because I not to toot my own horn, but when it comes to goaltending, I think there's 3 podcasts goalies should listen to. In goal for the obvious reason,
Yep.
and then between 2 posts because I think our formats are similar in that it's just conversations.
Yeah.
You have different conversations with the goalies about and so they're different approaches, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And there's room for both, and I think they're both great. I'm biased on mine, obviously, but no, it's one of those must listens to every week for me.
Well, the thing is, we don't talk about anything serious. Like some guys, like we had Adam, Minnesota boy,
Yeah,
Carlton, and I was able to dig up a bunch of stories from Esser and some other friends from like the coast and Rapid and stuff. So that was just a story. We
yeah,
had Joe Ranger, and we really weren't able to get info on Joe, so we just asked him about his experience and a bunch of goofy Canadian stuff too. To like, it's just the whole thing is we just want to have fun with it, nothing serious, and it's all just it's all jokes. So
what I love about your podcast is you do talk a lot about the experience, especially like junior hockey and college hockey, and I think it gives those young goalies the true understanding of what it's all about. It's not just showing up to the games. It's practices are sometimes at weird hours or all the time, and you get these coaches like Kyle's that kicks a Christmas tree and tries to cancel Christmas. You get the bus rides and everything. It's not as glamorous as we sometimes think it is, but looking back, it's part of the fun. It reminds me of my son. He was a Boy Scout for a while, and he went camping up in Ely, Minnesota in February. It was 30 below, and they're sleeping outside. And I asked one of the dads about it, and I go, "So how was it?" He goes, "If I'm being honest, in the moment it was miserable, but when we look back, it was amazing." And I
that's
think
awesome.
some of junior hockey and at times college hockey and even pro hockey, that's kind of what it is too. Like in the moment, you're miserable.
It's shit. You're going through the trenches, but when you look back, incredible
like,
memories.
Exactly. But I don't think kids are ready for that. And that's what I think your podcast does a great job of explaining that reality. So hopefully they're better prepared. So
we appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give you some time back on a Saturday so we can maybe make our ladies happy. Do stuff around the house. So thank you. It's been awesome. I'm going to keep listening between 2 posts, and I'm going to recommend others do the same. And you have a great Christmas.
Hey, you too. Happy holidays. Have a great Christmas, and we'll talk soon. All right. We'll see ya.